The Mark 50 armor screamed warnings as reality tore apart around him. Tony Stark had seen a lot of impossible things, gods, aliens, time travel, but nothing prepared him for the sensation of dimensional fabric shredding like wet paper. The wormhole experiment in his Malibu workshop had gone catastrophically wrong. One moment he was testing a theoretical Einstein-Rosen bridge generator. The next he was being pulled through a kaleidoscope of fracturing space-time that made the Chitauri invasion look like a neighborhood barbecue. Friday's voice fragmented mid-sentence. Boss, dimensional integrity. Static consumed the rest. Then he was falling. Actually falling, not flying, through an atmosphere that burned with more than just friction. Tony's HUD flickered, rebooted, and painted a picture that made his genius-level intellect stumble. He was plummeting toward a planet-sized installation under siege. Orbital defense platforms the size of city blocks fired streams of what his stuttering sensors could only classify as magnetic accelerated projectiles at massive alien vessels that looked like someone had crossed a purple cathedral with a nightmare. The alien ships returned fire with lances of superheated plasma that carved through human warships like blowtorches through aluminum foil. "Friday, talk to me!" Systems recalibrating, unknown energy signature interfering with... His AI's voice cut out again. The arc reactor in his chest pulsed irregularly. Whatever radiation or exotic physics he'd just been exposed to was playing hell with his tech. Tony fired repulsors to slow his descent, watching his power reserves drop faster than they should. The ground rushed up to meet him. No, not ground. A military installation carved into a cliff face, surrounded by prefabricated structures and what looked like supply depots. Human structures, thank God, but nothing he recognized from any nation on Earth. He crashed through the roof of a supply depot with enough force to crater concrete. The armor absorbed most of the impact, but Tony felt his ribs protest anyway. Emergency lights bathed everything in red as he staggered upright, HUD struggling to stabilize. "Friday? Partial systems online, boss. AI matrix fragmented. Rebuilding from backup protocols. External analysis. We are definitely not in Malibu anymore." "You think?" Tony surveyed the room. Weapons racks lined the walls. But these weren't any firearms he'd ever seen. Bullpup rifles with electronic ammunition counters, oversized pistols that looked like hand cannons, and something that resembled a rocket launcher with M41 SSR MAV AW stenciled on the side. Military designations, but wrong. All wrong. The depot door exploded inward. 3 figures in full combat armor stormed through, weapons trained on him with professional precision. But these weren't normal soldiers. They moved too fast, too coordinated. The armor was like nothing S.H.I.E.L.D. or any government had. Full-body powered suits painted in various colors, helmets with golden visors that gave no hint of the faces beneath. One wore blue armor with a robotic arm that whirred with servo motors. Another, in tan and red, carried a massive weapon that hummed with barely contained energy. The third, smallest of the group, but somehow radiating the most authority, wore silver armor with a blue-trimmed helmet. "Freeze!" the one in tan barked, voice filtered through the helmet's speakers. "Identify yourself!" Tony raised his hands slowly, repulsors powering down but still glowing. "Tony Stark, engineer, consultant, genius, take your pick." "And you are?" "Covenant." The one in blue, a woman's voice, asked her companions, rifle never wavering from Tony's chest. "Armor's wrong," the smaller one replied, also female. "Energy signature doesn't match anything in the database." "Could be Oni Black Ops," suggested the tan-armored soldier. "Oni doesn't crash through supply depots," the blue one countered. "Cat, scan him." The silver-armored woman, Cat, stepped forward, some kind of handheld device extended. Tony's HUD immediately registered an active scan, his systems instinctively throwing up what firewalls they could. Kat tilted her head, and Tony imagined surprise behind that golden visor. "Carter, you need to see this. His armor's power source. I've never seen anything like it. It's not fusion, not chemical, not any UNSC technology in our database. And his AI architecture," she paused. "It's fragmenting, like it was exposed to slip-space radiation without proper shielding." "Slip-space," Tony interrupted. "As in faster-than-light travel through alternate dimensional space. You people have FTL." The three soldiers exchanged glances that Tony couldn't read through their helmets, but felt in his gut. He'd just said something either very stupid or very concerning. "Who are you, really?" Carter demanded, taking a step closer. Even without seeing his face, Tony could feel the intensity of the scrutiny. And how did an unauthorized combatant get onto Reach during a Class 1 planetary defense crisis? "Reach? Is that where I am? Look, I don't know what's happening, but I'm not your enemy. I'm from..." Tony paused. How did you explain dimensional travel to people who might not even have the theoretical framework? "Somewhere else. Very else. And based on those burning ships I saw on the way down, you've got bigger problems than me." An explosion rocked the depot. Alarms wailed to life across the base. Carter's helmet speakers crackled with incoming transmission. "All personnel, Covenant forces have breached the perimeter. This is not a drill. Fall back to Rally Point Omega. Noble team, redirect to Firebase Bravo for civilian evacuation. Commander Holland wants that firebase held at all costs." "Copy that," Carter responded, then turned back to Tony. His rifle lowered slightly, not trusting, but pragmatic. "Stark, was it? You've got exactly one chance to prove you're not a threat. Firebase Bravo is 3 clicks northeast, and it's about to be overrun by alien religious zealots who want to burn this entire planet to glass. You coming with us, or do we leave you for the Covenant?" Tony looked at his flickering HUD, at these unknown soldiers in armor that somehow reminded him of his own suits, at the red sky visible through the hole he'd made in the roof where alien ships descended like angels of death. "Firebase Bravo, right." He lowered his hands, repulsors flaring as he prepared for flight. "Let's go save some people. But for the record, if anyone named Nick Fury shows up, I'm out." Carter's helmet tilted slightly. "Who?" "Never mind. Lead the way, soldier." If you want to see more characters enter different universes, hit that subscribe button and drop the name of a character and the universe you'd want to see them in down in the comments below. Spartans never die. The 4 of them moved out into a war zone that would redefine everything Tony Stark thought he knew about survival. The Warthog, because apparently that's what they called the oversized military dune buggy with a chain gun mounted on the back, tore across Reach's surface at speeds that would have made Happy Henson have a heart attack. Tony flew alongside, Mark 50 nanites compensating for the irregular power drain from his arc reactor. Friday was slowly rebuilding her matrix, but the AI kept hitting fragmentation errors that suggested the slipspace radiation had done more damage than simple data corruption. "Boss, I'm detecting massive thermal signatures incoming," Friday warned. "Energy profiles consistent with directed plasma weapons. Recommend evasive..." The sky lit up purple. Tony's sensors screamed as bolts of superheated gas the size of cars streaked past him, impacting the cliff face to their right and turning solid rock into molten slag. The heat wash was intense, even through his armor's thermal management systems. "Evasive maneuvers," Carter barked from the driver's seat. The Warthog swerved hard. Tony banked left, repulsors flaring as he climbed altitude. His HUD finally resolved the incoming threats. Aircraft that looked like they'd been designed by someone who thought insects, and religious iconography should merge. They moved with unnatural grace, banking through the air on what his sensors identified as some kind of anti-gravity propulsion. "Those are Banshees," Kat's voice came through his armor's communication system. She'd apparently hacked his frequency within 30 seconds of meeting him. Tony filed that away under concerning, along with everything else about this nightmare. Covenant ground support fighters, fast, maneuverable, and they've been hunting human aircraft since this war started. "How long has this war been going?" Tony asked, charging his repulsors. 27 years, Carter replied flatly. 27 years. Tony's mind reeled. Earth's entire Chitauri invasion had lasted hours. These people had been fighting alien invasion for longer than most of his relationships had lasted. A Banshee screamed toward him, plasma cannons spitting purple death. Tony rolled, nanites reconfiguring his armor's surface to deflect thermal energy, but one bolt clipped his left shoulder. The Mark 50's shields that had taken hits from Thanos' forces, simply weren't designed for sustained plasma exposure. Warning indicators flared across his HUD. Armor integrity, 91%. Friday, adaptive countermeasures. Working on it, boss. Their plasma weapons operate on principles that violate several laws of thermodynamics as we understand them. Fascinating, really. Fascinating later, survival now. Tony twisted mid-air, bringing both palms up. Repulsor blasts lanced out, striking the Banshee's cockpit. The alien aircraft, and he could see the pilot now, something vaguely humanoid in ornate armor, exploded in a satisfying fireball. But 3 more were already converging on his position. Below, the Warthog's chain gun roared to life. The soldier in tan, call sign Emile, based on the cross chatter, was standing in the back, firing controlled bursts at another Banshee. Tracer rounds stitched across the alien fighter's hull, punching through its armor with kinetic force. The Banshee spiraled into the ground. Not bad for primitives, Tony muttered, then immediately felt like an ass. These people had been holding the line against plasma-wielding aliens with what amounted to advanced conventional weapons for nearly 3 decades. That wasn't primitive. That was desperate, determined, and frankly terrifying. Firebase Bravo appeared over the next ridge. Tony's sensors painted a grim picture. A hastily fortified position with prefab walls, gun emplacements, and maybe 200 soldiers defending against. His HUD struggled to count them all. Thousands of contacts. The aliens came in waves, small methane-breathing creatures that moved in swarms, taller ones with energy shields and rifles that spat needles of crystalline projectiles, and towering pairs of what looked like walking tanks covered in orange armor plating. Noble 2, Noble 5. "Take the western gun emplacement," Carter ordered, bringing the Warthog to a skidding halt behind cover. "Noble 4, you're with me on the southern approach. We need to buy these civilians time to reach the evacuation Pelicans." "And me?" Tony asked, landing beside the Warthog with repulsors kicking up dust. Carter's golden visor turned toward him. For a long moment, the Spartan said nothing. Then, "You said you're an engineer. Prove it." "We've got gun emplacements that need power rerouting, a generator that's failing, and about 15 minutes before this entire firebase gets overrun. Fix what you can, or fight. Your choice." It wasn't really a choice. Tony Stark didn't do helpless bystander. "Friday, give me a tactical breakdown of their power grid." "Already on it, boss." Their technology is remarkably robust, but significantly behind arc reactor miniaturization. I'm detecting fusion reactor signatures, magnetic accelerator cannons, and, oh, that's interesting, rudimentary AI assistance in their targeting computers. Tony sprinted toward the nearest gun emplacement, where a Marine in standard combat armor was frantically trying to restart a massive railgun. The weapon, labeled M71 anti-aircraft gun had clearly taken a plasma hit. Half its control systems were melted slag. "Out of the way," Tony said, already extending nanite tendrils toward the weapon's power coupling. The Marine couldn't have been more than 22, with eyes that had seen too much, stared at him. "Who the hell are you?" "Currently, your best shot at getting this gun back online." Tony's nanites interfaced with the alien technology. No, not alien, human technology that had evolved along a different path. Fusion power cells where he'd use arc reactor miniaturization, magnetic coils for projectile acceleration instead of repulsor-based propulsion. It was all so analog, and yet elegantly simple. Friday's reconstruction protocols kicked in, using the local power signatures to rebuild her damaged matrix. "Boss, I'm interfacing with their BattleNet. They call it TACCOM, Military Communications Network, and... oh dear." "What oh dear? I hate oh dear." "According to their command channels, this isn't just a battle. This entire planet, Reach, is falling. It's humanity's most fortified military stronghold, and the Covenant invasion force numbers in the thousands of ships. This firebase is a footnote in a planetary extinction event." Tony's hands froze for half a second. Thousands of ships, not dozens like New York, not hundreds like Wakanda. Thousands, and these people were still fighting. "How long until those Pelicans are loaded?" Tony asked the Marine. 10 minutes, maybe less. We've got civilians from New Alexandria, families, kids. If we don't hold, they don't make it out." "Kids." Of course there were kids. Tony's nanites rewired the gun's power systems, bypassing the melted control boards and routing directly to his armor's arc reactor for a temporary boost. "Try it now." The Marine slammed the activation switch. The M71 hummed to life, its targeting system painting hostile contacts across the firebase perimeter. The Marine's eyes went wide. "Holy shit, it actually worked." "Yeah, well, I do that." Tony was already moving to the next emplacement. His HUD tracking Carter and his team engaging the alien forces, Covenant they called them, with a precision that made the Avengers look sloppy. The Spartans moved like nothing Tony had ever seen. Carter swept through a group of the small methane breathers. Grunts, Friday helpfully supplied, with a combat knife the size of a machete, each movement economical and lethal. Kat's robotic arm crushed an elite's shield with a single punch before she executed it with a headshot. Emil carved through enemies with what looked like a shotgun modified for pure devastation. They weren't soldiers. They were weapons that happened to be human-shaped. "Friday, what am I looking at here?" "According to the TACOM chatter, they're Spartans. Spartan 3 program specifically. Augmented super soldiers. Faster, stronger, more resilient than baseline humans. They're... Boss, you need to see this. They're children. Or they were when they were conscripted. The program recruited war orphans and... I'll spare you the details. They're deeply unpleasant." Tony's stomach turned. Child soldiers. Genetically modified child soldiers fighting a war of extinction. An explosion rocked the gun emplacement he'd just repaired. A Covenant elite, 9 feet of alien muscle in ornate armor with an energy sword that hummed with purple plasma, vaulted over the defensive wall. The Marine raised his rifle, but the elite was faster. The energy sword came down. Tony's repulsor blast caught the elite mid-strike, sending it flying backward 15 feet. He landed between the Marine and the alien threat, armor fully charged, HUD painting targeting solutions across a dozen more incoming contacts. "Stay behind me," Tony said, then fired. Repulsor blasts, micro-missiles, and unibeam bursts lit up the firebase. Covenant forces fell, but for every one Tony dropped, 2 more seemed to appear. His power levels were dropping faster than he'd like. The arc reactor wasn't operating at full efficiency in whatever exotic physics governed this universe. "Noble team, we've got a problem," Kat's voice cut through TACOM. "Long-range sensors are detecting a Covenant cruiser moving into position. If they're bringing their main weapon to bear..." "How long?" Carter interrupted. 3 minutes, maybe less. Tony checked the civilian evacuation status. The Pelicans, bulky transport craft that reminded him of oversized Chinooks, were still loading. Families huddled together, children crying, soldiers maintaining desperate perimeter as Covenant forces pressed closer. "Friday. What's a Covenant cruiser's main weapon?" "Energy projector. Sustained plasma beam capable of glassing planetary surfaces. It turns everything it touches to molten glass. Temperature estimates exceed 50 million degrees Celsius." 50 million degrees. Tony looked at the Pelicans, at the civilians, at the Spartans who kept fighting because that's what weapons did. They didn't break, they didn't surrender. They just fought until they won or stopped functioning. And he made a choice. "Carter," Tony's voice cut across TACOM. "I can buy you time, but I need coordinates for that cruiser." "Negative," Carter replied, dropping 2 grunts with precise bursts. "You don't have the firepower to scratch a Covenant capital ship, and we can't spare assets on suicide runs." "With respect, Commander, and I mean absolutely none. I didn't ask for permission." Tony's repulsors flared as he lifted off, Friday feeding him coordinates, his HUD painting the massive Covenant vessel hanging in low orbit like a purple cathedral of death. The cruiser's ventral weapon was already glowing, building charge for the killing blow that would glass this entire region. "Stark, stand down!" Carter's voice was sharp with command authority. Tony increased thrust. "Sorry, Carter, but where I come from, we've got a saying. Sometimes you gotta take one for the team. Friday, route all available power to the Unibeam, and if this doesn't work..." "I know, boss. It's been an honor." The Mark 50 screamed toward orbit, toward impossible odds, toward a war he didn't understand but couldn't walk away from. Because that's what heroes did. Even when the universe was wrong, even when they were outmatched, even when nobody asked them to, they fought anyway. The atmospheric transition nearly tore Tony apart. Earth's exosphere didn't prepare him for whatever exotic physics governed Reach's upper atmosphere. Ice crystals formed on his armor's surface as pressure differentials tried to crush him, then sublimated instantly as he broke into the vacuum of space. His HUD flickered, recalibrating for zero-gravity combat, while Friday routed emergency power from non-essential systems to life support. "Boss, your arc reactor is operating at 62% efficiency. These environmental conditions are degrading our power output faster than projected." "Story of my day," Tony muttered, thrusters firing to adjust his trajectory toward the Covenant cruiser. Up close, the ship was even more nightmarish, 3 kilometers of alien architecture that looked like someone had crossed Gothic cathedrals with organic growth patterns. Purple and silver metal formed curves that shouldn't have been structurally sound, dotted with glowing energy conduits that pulsed like veins. And beneath its bow, the energy projector was building charge. Tony's sensors painted the thermal signature, escalating toward weapons discharge in 90 seconds. "Friday, target analysis. Where do I hit this thing?" "Scanning." "Boss, their shielding technology is significantly more advanced than our repulsor-based energy barriers. I'm detecting a bubble-shaped energy shield encompassing the entire vessel. Our weapons will need to penetrate that before reaching the hull." "So find me a weakness." "Working on... Wait. There." The energy projector's charging cycle requires lowering a section of their forward shields to allow plasma venting. It's a design flaw, but only exploitable during the 3.7 seconds before firing. Tony did the math. He had to close distance, time his attack perfectly, and hit hard enough to disrupt a weapon system he didn't understand with technology that was operating at partial capacity in a universe with different physics. Jarvis would have given me better odds, Tony said. Jarvis didn't have to reconstruct himself from fragmented code after being dragged through dimensional barriers, boss. Fair point. Movement on his sensors. 3 Banshees screaming toward him from the cruiser's launch bays, followed by what looked like armored soldiers in thruster packs. The aliens, elites. His database now identified them, wore ornate armor that shimmered with personal energy shields, carrying rifles that his sensors flagged as plasma-based. Of course they have space-capable infantry. Why wouldn't they? Tony rolled, dodging plasma fire that turned the vacuum around him into superheated gas. He returned fire with repulsor blasts, catching one elite directly in the chest. The alien's shields flared bright blue, absorbed the hit, then flickered but held. The elite raised its rifle again. Friday, their personal shields operate on different principles than ours. Recharge cycles appear faster, but they're vulnerable to sustained fire or kinetic impacts. Recommend alternating energy and physical munitions. Tony launched a micro-missile spread. The projectiles tracked toward the elites with precision, detonating against their shields in cascading explosions. 2 shields collapsed. Tony followed up with concentrated repulsor fire, and both aliens went tumbling through space, trailing frozen atmosphere from their ruptured armor. The Banshees were more problematic. They moved with impossible agility for craft their size, plasma cannons stitching through space where Tony had been milliseconds before. He twisted, nanites reconfiguring his armor's surface to maximize thruster efficiency in vacuum, and dove beneath one fighter. His palm repulsor fired point blank into its underbelly. The Banshee exploded. 60 seconds until the energy projector fired. Tony accelerated toward the cruiser's bow, dodging defensive turrets that tracked his approach with targeting computers sophisticated enough to lead his movements. Plasma bolts carved past him, close enough that his armor's surface temperature spiked into dangerous ranges. The Mark 50's heat management systems struggled to compensate. Power reserves at 48%, Friday warned. If we commit to a full unibeam discharge, we won't have enough energy for atmospheric re-entry. One problem at a time. 45 seconds. The cruiser's energy projector was visible now, a massive emitter array glowing white-hot with contained plasma. The energy buildup was so intense Tony's sensors could barely measure it. 50 million degrees, Friday had said. That beam would glass everything within a 100-kilometer radius of Firebase Bravo. All those civilians loading onto Pelicans, the Spartans holding the line, the Marine whose gun emplacement he'd fixed, gone in seconds, turned to superheated vapor and molten rock. Tony thought of New York, of the nuke he'd carried through the Chitauri portal, expecting to die. He'd survived that. Barely. This felt familiar in all the worst ways. 30 seconds. A section of the cruiser's forward shields shimmered and collapsed, the necessary power venting before firing. Friday's calculations had been perfect. Tony had exactly 3.7 seconds. He extended both palms forward. Nanites reconfigured, channeling every available amp from his arc reactor, pulling power from thrusters and life support, and even Friday's processing cores. The unibeam coalesced, a concentrated stream of arc reactor energy that turned the vacuum bright blue-white. Firing. The beam struck the energy projector's emitter array dead center. For a heartbeat, nothing happened. Then the exotic physics of 2 incompatible technologies meeting at weapons-grade intensity decided to throw a tantrum. The energy projector's plasma containment failed catastrophically. The charged shot, meant to glass a continent, detonated inside its own firing chamber. Secondary explosions rippled through the cruiser's forward sections as containment fields collapsed in chain reactions. The massive ship shuddered, its bow erupting in cascading detonations that vented atmosphere and debris into space. Tony's HUD painted damage assessment: severe structural failure, primary weapon destroyed, cruiser retreating on emergency power. "Target neutralized," Friday announced. "However, boss, we have a significant problem." Tony checked his power reserves, and his stomach dropped. 8%. Friday had been right. Committing to the unibeam had drained him to critical levels. His thrusters sputtered, barely maintaining position. Atmospheric re-entry at this power level would cook him inside his armor, if the suit even held together through the descent. "Well," Tony said, watching Reach rotate below him, beautiful and burning. "This is less than ideal." His sensors detected movement. A UNSC frigate, Savannah, according to IFF transponder, was moving to intercept his position. But it was moving slowly, clearly damaged from the battle, and Tony's power reserves were dropping by the second. Life support was already pulling from emergency batteries. Then his proximity alarm screamed. A Covenant drop pod, basically a tear-shaped boarding craft, launched from the cruiser's aft sections, arcing directly toward him. The pod opened, and 3 elites in zero-G combat armor emerged with murder in mind. Their plasma rifles tracked his position with professional precision. "You've got to be kidding me." Tony fired his remaining repulsor charge at the nearest elite, but the alien's shields held. Return fire burned across his left arm, and his HUD painted warnings. Armor breach, nanite cohesion failing, structural integrity at 73%. He couldn't fight, couldn't run, couldn't even maneuver effectively at this power level. The elites closed in, energy swords igniting with purple plasma. Tony raised his arms in a defensive posture he knew was futile. These aliens had been fighting this war for 27 years. They'd perfected killing humans in vacuum. Magnetic accelerator rounds streaked through space, moving at a significant fraction of light speed. The first elite's shields collapsed under the kinetic impact, then the alien's armor and the body inside simply ceased to exist, turned to expanding vapor by hypervelocity tungsten. The second and third elites tried to evade, but the rounds tracked them with inhuman precision. 2 more kills. Tony's sensors identified the source, a longsword interceptor, UNSC fighter craft, coming in hot with its MAC guns still glowing from discharge. Unidentified contact. "This is Flight Officer Jenkins, call sign Raven 2. You just saved Firebase Bravo 300 souls. UNSC Savannah is moving to recover you. Try not to die in the next 4 minutes, yeah?" Tony's laugh was half hysterical. "I'll do my best." The Savannah moved into position, its launch bay opening. Tony used the last dregs of his thruster power to guide himself toward the frigate. Watching his power reserves tick down to 4%, then 3, then 2. His heating systems failed. The vacuum's cold began seeping through armor breaches. Friday's matrix flickered. He floated into the launch bay just as his arc reactor hit 1% and his armor locked up, switching to full conservation mode. Magnetic clamps grabbed him, pulled him down to the deck. Atmosphere flooded the bay, and Tony heard the blessed sound of pressure equalization. Marines in standard combat armor surrounded him immediately, weapons trained on his immobile form. One, a grizzled sergeant with a scar across his jaw, approached cautiously. "Don't move," the sergeant ordered. "Wasn't planning on it," Tony managed through his helmet speakers. "Armor's locked. Low power. I'm friendly. Mostly." "That's what you call friendly." "You just crippled a Covenant CCS-class battlecruiser." "Solo." Tony's faceplate retracted, nanites peeling back to reveal his face. He grinned despite the exhaustion, despite the cold, despite everything. Yeah, well, I'm an overachiever. The sergeant stared at him. Who the hell are you? Tony Stark. And before you ask, yes, I need a drink. No, I don't know what I'm doing here. And yes, that was really stupid even by my standards. Footsteps echoed through the bay. Carter and his Spartans had evidently been retrieved as well, because the blue armored soldier, Noble 2, Kat, approached with her helmet still on, robotic arm already extending some kind of scanning device. His armor's power source is failing, Kat reported. We need to stabilize it before I become a very expensive paperweight, Tony finished. Yeah, I'm aware. You wouldn't happen to have a multi-gigawatt power supply lying around, would you? We have fusion reactors, the sergeant said slowly. But they're not exactly portable. Fusion reactors. Right. Tony's mind was already working despite the exhaustion. Friday, can we interface? Friday's voice was weak, fragmenting. Boss, I can barely maintain consciousness at current power levels. Stay with me. We've been through worse. Had they, though? Tony thought of Titan, of Thanos, of everything they'd survived. But this felt different, more desperate. These people had been fighting for 27 years, watching their planets burn, turning children into weapons because they had no other choice. And he'd just thrown himself into their war without understanding the first thing about it. Carter's golden visor stared down at him. Stark, that was either the bravest or most reckless thing I've seen in this war. I'm not sure which. Tony managed a weak smile. Why not both? Get him to engineering, Carter ordered. And someone contact Dr. Halsey. She's going to want to see this. As Marines lifted him, still locked in his armor like a high-tech statue, Tony caught a glimpse through the Savannah's viewports. Reach burned below them, cities glassing under Covenant bombardment, defense stations falling, evacuation craft fleeing into slip space. One cruiser stopped. Hundreds remained. And somehow, Tony Stark had just become part of humanity's desperate stand against extinction. The UNSC Savannah's engineering bay was organized chaos. Marines and engineers rushed between damaged systems, sparks showering from plasma-scarred bulkheads, and somewhere deep in the ship's superstructure, a fusion reactor hummed with barely contained power. Tony sat on a workbench, still in his locked-up armor, while a team of engineers stared at him like he was either a miracle or a bomb waiting to detonate. I've never seen anything like this, muttered Chief Engineer Moretti, a woman in her 40s with oil-stained coveralls and eyes that suggested she'd forgotten what sleep was years ago. Her scanner moved across Tony's chest plate, where the arc reactor's glow had dimmed to barely visible. This power source, it's not fusion, not even antimatter. What the hell is it running on? Proprietary Stark Industries technology, Tony said, his voice hoarse. Arc reactor, self-sustaining clean energy. Back home, it powers everything from my armor to my Malibu mansion. Here, apparently it's having an existential crisis about local physics. Boss, Friday's voice was threadbare, barely audible. Reactor efficiency down to 38%. I'm routing emergency power to your biological support systems. We have maybe 40 minutes before cascade failure. 40 minutes. Great. Can you interface with their fusion reactor? Tony asked. Just enough to recharge. Buy us time to figure out. The physics are incompatible, Moretti interrupted, pulling up holographic schematics on a nearby display. Our fusion plants operate on magnetic confinement principles. Your reactor's energy signature is reading as something else entirely. If we just plug you into our power grid, we're more likely to cause a feedback loop that what? That turns this section of the ship into a very brief, very bright star. Okay, so direct connection is out. Tony's mind raced through possibilities. What about indirect charging, induction coupling, wireless power transfer? Moretti exchanged glances with her team. Theoretically possible, but we'd need to build a custom interface, and that would take hours we don't have. Carter's voice cut through the discussion. The Spartan had removed his helmet, revealing a face that was younger than Tony expected, maybe early 30s, but with eyes that had aged decades past that. Moretti, do what you can. Stark, while you're still conscious. We need answers. Answers to what? I already told you, I'm not from around here. That's not an answer. It's an evasion. Carter stepped closer, and Tony was reminded viscerally that Spartans weren't just soldiers. They were augmented weapons designed to break things efficiently. You appeared during the largest Covenant offensive in human history, carrying technology that doesn't match any known civilization, and you just disabled a capital ship with firepower that should have been impossible. So I'll ask again, who are you, and what are you doing on Reach? Tony met his gaze steadily. I'm an engineer who made a mistake with experimental technology and got yanked through a dimensional barrier into your nightmare of a war. And before you ask if I'm a spy or a Covenant trick or whatever paranoid scenario you're cooking up, consider that if I wanted to sabotage humanity, I probably wouldn't have spent my last power reserves saving your firebase. He's not lying, Kat said, entering the engineering bay with her helmet under her robotic arm. Her blonde hair was cut military short, and her eyes, one blue, one replaced with a cybernetic that glowed faintly, fixed on Tony with analytical precision. I've been running analysis on his technology. His armor's design philosophy is completely alien to UNSC engineering principles, but it's human technology. Advanced human technology, but human, and his AI, before it fragmented, was using quantum processing architectures we haven't even theorized yet. Quantum processing. Moretti's head snapped toward Kat. Are you saying his AI is more sophisticated than Cortana? Kat finished. By an order of magnitude. At least, it was before slip space exposure damaged it. Tony felt defensive on Friday's behalf. She's still sophisticated, just running on emergency power and rebuilding her neural matrices from backup. She's tough. She'll recover. If you survive the next 40 minutes, Carter said flatly. Kat, assessment. Can we stabilize his power source? Kat pulled up holographic displays, her cybernetic eye processing data faster than Tony's HUD could track. Possible but risky. We'd need to jury-rig an induction coil system using components from our damaged Archer missile systems. The magnetic accelerators might provide compatible energy transfer if we can step down the voltage enough not to overload his reactor. Time frame? 30 minutes, maybe less if engineering prioritizes it. Make it happen. Carter turned back to Tony. You're alive because you saved Firebase Bravo. But when we're done here, you're going to answer questions, a lot of them, from people significantly less pleasant than me. Let me guess. Oni. Tony had picked up enough context from TACOM chatter during the battle. Office of Naval Intelligence, Black Ops, Secrets and Lies. Every universe apparently needed a SHIELD analog. Carter's expression didn't change, which was answer enough. Commander! A Marine burst into engineering, his face pale. We're receiving emergency transmission from Sword Base. They're under heavy assault. Covenant forces are pushing toward the restricted labs. Colonel Holland is requesting immediate Spartan support. Sword Base? Tony asked. Classified facility, Carter said shortly. Home to some of our most sensitive research. If the Covenant breach it... He stopped, clearly unwilling to share operational details with the dimensional stranger in experimental armor. Noble team, gear up. We're dropping in 10 minutes. Sir, what about Stark? Kat asked. Carter looked at Tony, measuring. How fast can you get combat capable? Depends. How fast can your engineers rig that induction system? 25 minutes if we're lucky. Tony did the math. Friday would be running on fumes. His armor would be at maybe 40% capacity. No time for diagnostics, no proper testing, just combat rush engineering held together with hope and spite. He grinned. I've launched missions on worse odds. Get me that power connection. 23 minutes later, Tony's arc reactor hummed with renewed power, unstable, inefficient, but functional. The induction coil system that Moretti's team had welded together looked like it belonged in a steampunk convention, all exposed magnetic coils and hastily rerouted power conduits. But it worked. His armor unlocked with a satisfying series of mechanical clicks, nanites flowing back into active configuration. Power levels at 42%, Friday announced, her voice stronger now but still fragmented. Boss, I've completed preliminary analysis of local technology. Their AI architecture is fascinating, much more restricted than my own design, but optimized for tactical analysis and... Later, Friday. Right now we've got a Covenant assault to crash. Tony stood, testing his armor's responsiveness. The Mark 50 moved smoothly, but he could feel the inefficiencies in every system. His repulsors were operating at 70% capacity. His missiles were down to 6 remaining micromunitions, and his shields were still incompatible with plasma weapons. He'd need to adapt. Fast. The Savannah's launch bay had been converted into a drop zone. Noble Team stood in full armor, checking weapons with mechanical efficiency. Emil was sharpening his combat knife, a blade the size of Tony's forearm with a serrated edge that looked designed for psychological warfare as much as actual combat. Jorge, the largest Spartan Tony had seen yet, was loading a chain gun that could have served as vehicle armament. June checked his sniper rifle with the care of a surgeon preparing instruments. And standing slightly apart from the others was someone new. She wore standard Mjolnir armor, painted in sage green and steel, helmet on, but something about her stance was different from the others. Less mechanically efficient, more human. Her armor was marked with Noble 6 in stenciled letters. New recruit, Kat explained, noticing Tony's attention. Lieutenant, just assigned to Noble Team after our previous 6. She stopped. We lost them. You fill gaps when they open. That's how war works. Tony thought of the Avengers, of the gaps they'd never properly filled after certain losses. Yeah, I know how that works. Carter addressed the team, his voice carrying command authority that reminded Tony of Steve Rogers. Insertion via Falcon drop. Sword-based defenses are failing. Our objective is to secure the restricted lab level and ensure Dr. Halsey's research doesn't fall into Covenant hands. This is a retrieval operation, not a last stand. We get the data, we extract. Clear? Sir, the team responded in unison. Carter's visor turned toward Tony. Stark, you're coming with us. Consider this your evaluation. You perform, you earn a place at the table. You don't, and Oni will have you in an interrogation room before your armor finishes cooling down. No pressure then. Spartans don't understand pressure, Emil said, his voice rough through his skull-painted helmet. We just understand eliminating targets. Comforting. The Pelican dropship rattled through atmospheric re-entry, Reach's burning surface visible through the troop bay's windows. Tony watched cities glass under Covenant bombardment, defense platforms explode in orbital space, evacuation craft fleeing with holds packed beyond capacity. 27 years of this. How were these people still fighting? Noble 6 sat across from him, silent behind her helmet. After a long moment, she spoke, her voice younger than he'd expected. First drop. Into this particular hellscape. Yeah. Gets easier. Does it? A pause. No, but you learn to function anyway. The Pelican shook as plasma fire streaked past. The pilot's voice crackled over the intercom. 30 seconds to LZ. Covenant AA is hot. This is going to be a combat insertion. Carter stood, mag-locking his DMR to his armor. Noble team, we are green and very, very mean. Let's show the Covenant why humanity doesn't surrender. Tony powered up his repulsors, checking his remaining munitions one last time. 42% power, 6 micro-missiles. Repulsors operating at 70%. Shields incompatible with the primary enemy weapon system. And he was about to drop into a military installation under siege by religious zealot aliens who'd been perfecting human extermination for 27 years. Friday, please tell me you're still with me. Always, boss. Though I feel compelled to note that your decision-making process remains questionable at best. Tony grinned inside his helmet. Wouldn't have it any other way. The Pelican's rear ramp dropped, revealing Sword Base below. A massive facility built into a cliff face, already burning, already dying, already fighting. Carter jumped first, dropping 300 feet like it was nothing. The rest of Noble Team followed without hesitation. Tony Stark, genius-billionaire-philanthropist from a universe where he'd fought gods and monsters, looked down at humanity's desperate last stand on their fortress world, and jumped. Tony's repulsors flared as he descended, controlled flight rather than the Spartan's brutal freefall. Below, Sword Base was a war zone, painted in plasma fire and human desperation. Covenant drop pods, those tear-shaped meteors of alien aggression, were embedded throughout the facility's exterior, disgorging troops that moved with the practiced efficiency of an invasion force that had glassed dozens of human worlds. His HUD painted targets. Grunts in their methane-breathing apparatus scuttling between cover, jackals with energy shields that shimmered purple, elites barking orders in their guttural language that Friday was already attempting to decode. And something new. Massive creatures that stood nearly 12 feet tall, covered in orange armor plating, moving in pairs with fuel rod cannons that fired explosive plasma. Those are hunters, Kat's voice came through TACOM as she landed with mechanical precision beside a defensive turret. Lagolo worm colonies in powered armor. They bond in pairs. Kill one, the other goes berserk, and they're heavily armored everywhere except... An elite's plasma rifle bolt interrupted her, splashing against her shields. Kat rolled behind cover, returned fire with her DMR, and the elite's shields collapsed under sustained kinetic impacts. Her follow-up shot punched through the alien's skull. Except their backs, she finished calmly. Tony touched down on Sword Base's exterior platform, immediately drawing fire from a grunt squad. Plasma bolts hissed past him, one clipping his shoulder and dropping his shields to 38%. The heat was intense, even through his armor's thermal management. Friday, I thought we had shields. We do, boss. They're just not designed for superheated plasma that operates outside known thermodynamic principles. I'm adapting algorithms, but... Tony silenced her with a repulsor blast that sent 3 grunts flying off the platform, their methane tanks exploding mid-air in satisfying orange fireballs. Not efficient, not elegant. But Reach's time for elegance had passed somewhere around the time Covenant ships had darkened its skies. Noble team, form up on me. Carter's voice cut through the chaos. The Spartan was already moving towards Sword Base's main entrance, his DMR barking with metronomic precision. Each shot was a kill, no wasted ammunition, no hesitation, just efficient, mechanical lethality. Jorge's chain gun roared to life, the heavy weapon chewing through Covenant infantry with a sound like thunder. The massive Spartan advanced like a walking tank, plasma fire splashing off his shields while he laid down suppressing fire that turned aliens into mist. Emil moved like death with a shotgun, closing to point-blank range where Covenant shields were useless against kinetic buckshot. His combat knife flashed, carving through a jackal's throat before his shotgun obliterated an elite at 5 meters. The skull painted on his helmet wasn't decoration, it was a promise. June's sniper rifle cracked from elevated position, each shot a precision kill against high-value targets. An elite commander's head exploded. A grunt operating a plasma turret collapsed. A jackal sniper tumbled from its perch. The bullets moved faster than sound, faster than shields could compensate. And Noble 6. She fought with a desperate intensity that reminded Tony of soldiers who'd seen too much too young. Her assault rifle chattered in controlled bursts, her movements aggressive but calculated, pushing forward where others would have taken cover. She was trying to prove something. Tony recognized the impulse. "Stark, left flank," Carter barked. Tony spun. A hunter pair was advancing toward their position, fuel rod cannons charging with ominous green light. His sensors painted them as priority threats. Their armor was thick enough to shrug off small arms fire, and those weapons could punch through UNSC tanks. Friday, targeting solutions. Their armor is nearly impenetrable from the front. However, the exposed worm colony flesh on their backs is vulnerable. I recommend... Tony was already moving. He fired his repulsors at the lead hunter's feet. Not trying to penetrate armor, but to destabilize its footing. The massive creature staggered. Tony rolled beneath its fuel rod blast. The explosive plasma detonated against Sword Base's wall behind him, with enough force to crater reinforced concrete, and came up behind the hunter. His unibeam fired point blank into the exposed orange flesh of the worm colony. The hunter's death scream was alien and agonized, a sound like 1,000 voices crying out at once, because that's what it was. Thousands of worms dying together. The creature collapsed, and its bonded partner immediately swiveled toward Tony with pure rage in its movements. Oh, this is the berserk part. Great. The enraged hunter charged with shocking speed for something that size. Tony launched into the air. Repulsors barely getting him clear as the hunter's melee attack, a swipe with its shield that weighed more than a car, passed through the space he'd occupied. The follow-up fuel rod blast tracked his flight path. Noble 6's assault rifle opened up on full automatic, every round slamming into the hunter's exposed back. The creature turned toward this new threat, and Tony saw his opening. 2 micro-missiles launched from his gauntlets, tracking systems locked on exposed flesh. The explosions were overkill. The second hunter collapsed beside its bonded partner. "Not bad, Stark," Emil commented, reloading his shotgun with mechanical efficiency. "Might make a decent soldier if you stop flying around like a target." "I'll take that as a compliment." It wasn't. Carter was already at Sword Base's entrance, bypassing security with authorization codes that suggested this wasn't his first visit. "Noble team, inside. We need to reach Halsey's lab before..." The building shook. Not from plasma fire or explosions, but from something massive moving through its interior structure. Tony's sensors detected seismic impacts, regular and heavy, like footsteps from something that shouldn't exist. What the hell was that? "Scarab," Kat said grimly. Covenant heavy assault platform. Basically a walking tank with enough firepower to level city blocks. They must have dropped one directly into the upper levels. And Halsey's lab. Lower levels, but we have to go through the Scarab to get there. Tony checked his power reserves. 38% after that engagement. The fight with the hunters had drained more energy than he'd projected. Friday was managing power distribution as efficiently as possible, but they were operating on borrowed time. The Spartans moved through Sword Base's corridors with tactical precision that would have made any Special Forces team jealous. They cleared rooms with overlapping fields of fire, communicated in efficient shorthand, and never, ever stopped moving forward. Tony followed, learning their rhythm, adapting to their tempo. UNSC Marines were scattered throughout the facility, some defending choke points, others wounded and being dragged to evacuation points by their squad mates. They looked at the Spartans with something between awe and relief, like seeing myths made flesh. Tony understood that look. He'd seen it directed at the Avengers. But these Spartans weren't celebrities. They were weapons. Tools created to win an unwinnable war. "Elevator shaft ahead," John called from point position. "Scarabs directly above us, 2 levels up." Carter checked his tactical display. "We can bypass it through the maintenance tunnels. Kat, you're on navigation." "Negative," Kat replied, her cybernetic eye processing data streams. "The Scarab's already compromised structural integrity. If it moves, and it will, it'll collapse the entire central section. The maintenance tunnels will become a tomb. Alternative, we go through it." Emil laughed, a sound like grinding metal. "I like that plan." "You would," Jorge rumbled. "Carter?" The noble team leader was quiet for a moment, tactical calculations running behind his eyes. Tony recognized that expression, the weight of command, the math of acceptable casualties, the burden of deciding who lives and who dies. "We go through," Carter decided. "Fast and aggressive. Scarab's legs are vulnerable to heavy weapons. Jorge, you're our primary anti-armor. Everyone else provides covering fire and keeps Covenant infantry off his back." "Stark." "I've got aerial support covered," Tony interrupted. "That thing's top-mounted cannon won't track fast enough if I'm above it." "You sure about that?" Tony's faceplate retracted, letting Carter see his grin. "Commander, I fought a flying alien army over New York, gone toe-to-toe with a god, and survived being snapped out of existence. 1 walking tank? That's a Tuesday." Carter stared at him for a long moment. "I don't understand half of what you just said." "Good. Means I'm still unpredictable. Covenant won't see me coming either." Noble Six spoke up, her voice carrying an edge Tony hadn't heard before. "Commander, respectfully, we don't know if Stark can operate effectively in sustained combat. Firebase Bravo was one engagement. A Scarab is a problem that needs solving," Tony cut her off. "And solving problems is literally what I do. Trust me or don't, but either way, I'm going up there." The Spartan's helmet turned toward him, and Tony wished he could see her expression. Finally, she nodded. "Don't get killed. We've already lost 1/6 this month." The way she said it, flat, factual, like death was just another operational parameter, made Tony's chest tight. These people had normalized extinction. They'd internalized horror as standard operating procedure. He'd fought alongside gods and monsters, but he'd never fought in a war where the baseline assumption was that humanity would lose. "Elevators here," Kat announced. The doors opened with a hydraulic hiss, revealing a shaft that extended upward into darkness, punctuated by emergency lighting. And from above, the sound of the Scarab's massive legs impacting metal, shaking the entire structure. "Last chance to reconsider," Carter said, loading a fresh magazine. Tony's faceplate snapped shut. His HUD painted targeting solutions, power management protocols, and probability matrices that Friday was calculating in real time. 38% power, limited ammunition, shields that didn't properly work against the primary enemy weapon system, and 1 walking tank piloted by religious zealot aliens who thought glassing human worlds brought them closer to their gods. "Friday, what are our odds?" "Of survival, boss. Approximately. Actually, don't tell me. I work better with plausible deniability." The Spartans entered the elevator shaft, mag boots engaging as they began climbing toward the Scarab. Tony's repulsors fired, lifting him smoothly upward past them, toward the sound of alien machinery and plasma fire. Toward Sword Base's upper levels, where humanity's research might be the key to winning an unwinnable war, or just another thing the Covenant would glass into forgotten history. The elevator shaft opened into hell. The Scarab-dominated sword base's main atrium, 4 stories of Covenant engineering that looked like someone had crossed a spider with a cathedral and given it a god complex. Its 4 massive legs were embedded into the facility's floor, structural supports groaning under the weight. The main cannon mounted on its back swiveled with predatory intent, tracking UNSC Marines who were desperately trying to fall back to secondary positions. And everywhere were Covenant forces using the Scarab as a mobile command platform. Grunts, jackals, elites in ornate armor that marked them as officer class, all coordinating their assault from the safety of the war machine's shadow. Tony burst from the elevator shaft with repulsors at full burn, immediately drawing fire from a dozen plasma rifles. His shields, still woefully inadequate against superheated alien gas, dropped to 28% before he'd even fully assessed the tactical situation. Friday, I need target priorities. The Scarab's primary weapon is charging, boss. Analyzing. It's a directed energy beam capable of cutting through starship-grade armor. If it fires in this enclosed space, everyone dies. Got it. Target acquired. Tony spiraled upward, dodging plasma fire that turned the air around him into superheated vapor. The Scarab's main cannon tracked his movement with disturbing precision. Apparently, Covenant targeting computers were sophisticated enough to lead an aerial target. A lesson he filed away under things that might kill me. Below, Noble Team erupted from the elevator shaft like choreographed violence. Jorge's chain gun immediately laid down, suppressing fire, the heavy rounds chewing through grunt formations and forcing elites into cover. Carter and Jun moved with synchronized precision, their DMRs barking in controlled rhythm. Shield break, headshot, shield break, headshot, mechanical and merciless. Emil charged directly into close quarters, his shotgun roaring. A jackal's shield shattered under buckshot impact. His combat knife flashed, opening an elite's throat before the alien could raise its energy sword. Emil moved like death had learned to walk, and the Covenant forces learned to fear the skull-painted helmet. Noble Six fought with controlled aggression, her assault rifle never silent, her movements pushing forward into gaps that the others created. She rolled under an elite's plasma fire, came up with a grenade that stuck to the alien's chest plate. UNSC fragmentation grenades were magnetically primed, and the elite vanished in a shower of blue blood and shrapnel. But the Scarab was the real threat. Its cannon was fully charged now, the emitter glowing white-hot with contained energy. Tony's sensors screamed warnings as the weapon tracked toward Noble Team's position. "Everybody move," Carter's voice cut through TACOM. Tony didn't think. He just acted. His repulsors fired at maximum output, launching him directly into the Scarab's line of fire. Every rational calculation in Friday's processors screamed that this was suicide. The Scarab's main weapon could cut through capital ships. His armor was already operating at partial capacity. His shields were incompatible with directed energy weapons. The beam fired. Tony's palm repulsors discharged simultaneously, creating a focused energy field in front of him. Arc reactor technology meeting whatever exotic physics powered Covenant weapons. For one impossible moment, the two energy streams collided, and physics had opinions about that collision. The beam deflected. Not much, maybe 15 degrees, but enough. Instead of vaporizing Noble Team, the superheated energy carved through Sword Base's upper wall, melting reinforced concrete and structural titanium like wax. The building shook, alarms shrieking as containment protocols activated. But Tony's shields collapsed completely. The thermal backwash from redirecting that much energy cooked his armor's surface, nanites failing across his left side. Warning indicators flooded his HUD. Power reserves dropped to 31%. His left arm was barely responding. "Boss, armor integrity at 64%. Your deflection maneuver exceeded safe thermal thresholds by enough to not be dead. I'll take it." Tony dropped altitude as the Scarab's cannon began its recharge cycle. He had maybe 45 seconds before it could fire again. 45 seconds to neutralize a 4-story walking tank with depleted ammunition and failing armor. "Jorge, the legs!" Carter's command cut through the chaos. The massive Spartan was already moving, his chain gun discarded for something heavier. A Spartan laser, one of UNSC's few weapons capable of damaging heavy armor. The targeting laser painted one of the Scarab's legs, the capacitors whining as they built charge. An elite zealot, distinguished by ornate gold armor and a burning energy sword, dropped from the Scarab's upper platform directly toward Jorge. The alien moved with shocking speed, its sword raised for a killing blow that would have bisected the Spartan. June's sniper rifle cracked. The zealot's shields collapsed. Kat's follow-up shot punched through the alien's skull mid-leap, and the elite crashed to the floor, its energy sword deactivating with a dying hiss. "Target clear," Jun called. Jorge fired. The Spartan laser's beam, not as powerful as the Scarab's main weapon, but significantly more focused, carved into the war machine's leg joint. Armor plating glowed white-hot, then molten, then simply ceased to exist. The leg buckled. The Scarab lurched, its other 3 legs struggling to compensate for the sudden weight distribution failure. Its cannon, halfway through recharge cycle, swiveled wildly as the platform destabilized. "Stark, we need that cannon offline," Carter ordered. "Working on it." Tony flew directly toward the Scarab's back, where the massive cannon dominated its upper structure. Covenant crew, grunts operating the weapon's control systems, scattered as he approached, their panicked voices squeaking in their native language. He had 3 micro-missiles remaining, not enough to destroy the cannon outright, but maybe enough to disable its targeting systems. He launched them all. The missiles streaked toward the cannon's base, tracking systems locked on the exposed power conduits that fed the weapon. The explosions were precise, surgical, and devastating. The power conduits ruptured, venting exotic plasma in brilliant purple streams. The cannon went dark, its charge dissipating harmlessly. But Tony's celebration was cut short by proximity alarms. An elite ultra, distinguished by white armor that marked it as the Scarab's commanding officer, landed on the platform beside him with energy sword already swinging. Tony blocked with his left arm, the one already damaged, and felt the plasma blade cut through weakened nanites like they weren't there. Pain lanced up his arm as the sword's edge grazed actual flesh beneath. His HUD painted damage warnings in angry red. "Friday, a little help." "Your repulsors are at 70% capacity in that arm, boss. Insufficient power for effective..." Tony fired anyway. The repulsor blast at point-blank range caught the elite in the chest, sending the alien staggering backward. Not enough to penetrate its shields, but enough to create distance. Tony followed up with his right palm, this one fully charged, and the elite's shields finally collapsed under sustained fire. The alien dropped its energy sword, reached for its plasma rifle. Tony was faster. His repulsor blast caught the elite in the head, and the alien toppled backward off the Scarab's platform, disappearing into the melee below. "Noble team, the cannon's offline," Tony reported, breathing hard inside his helmet. His left arm was mostly unresponsive now, hanging at his side. Power reserves at 27%. Armor integrity at 58%. And they still had to reach Halsey's lab. "Copy that," Carter acknowledged. "Jorge, hit another leg. Bring this thing down." The Spartan laser fired again. Another leg joint melted under directed energy. The scarab's structural integrity finally gave way. The massive war machine collapsed with a groan of tortured metal, its remaining legs buckling, its platform tilting at dangerous angles. Covenant forces that had been using it as cover suddenly found themselves exposed. Noble Team didn't waste the opportunity. Their weapons never stopped, moving through Covenant positions with the efficiency of a surgical team removing tumors. Elites fell, grunts scattered or died. Jackals tried to form defensive positions and were flanked by Emil's aggressive close-quarters assault. The Scarab's core began to glow, unstable plasma containment, Friday helpfully noted. The whole thing was going to detonate. "Fall back," Carter ordered. "Everyone to the lower levels now." Tony's repulsors sputtered, not failing completely, but definitely protesting his continued existence. He descended toward Noble Team's position, his left arm still mostly dead, his HUD painting warnings about cascade failures in 3 different systems. Noble 6 caught his attention. The Spartan was covering their retreat, firing controlled bursts that kept Covenant forces pinned while her teammates moved toward the stairwell that led to Halsey's lab. Her shields were down. A plasma bolt had scorched her right shoulder plate. But she wasn't retreating, wasn't breaking contact. "6, fall back!" Carter's voice was sharp with command authority. She ignored him, maintaining her position for 3 more seconds, giving them all time to reach the stairwell. Only when Jorge physically grabbed her shoulder and pulled her toward cover did she disengage. They made it into the stairwell just as the Scarab's core detonated. The explosion was more than just chemical or kinetic. It was plasma containment failure, exotic energy suddenly unshackled from Covenant engineering. The blast wave shook Sword Base's foundations, and Tony heard structural supports failing somewhere above them. "Keep moving!" Kat shouted. "This whole section's compromised." They descended into Sword Base's lower levels, emergency lighting casting everything in red. The sounds of battle faded behind them, not because the fight was over, but because they were going deeper into the facility's restricted sections, where even the Covenant hadn't fully penetrated yet. Carter finally stopped at a reinforced door, marked with UNSC security protocols and biometric scanners. He placed his palm on the reader, and something in the lock mechanism recognized him. The door hissed open, revealing a laboratory that looked torn between military research facility and AI development center. And standing in the middle of it all, surrounded by holographic displays and data cores that glowed with active processing, was a woman in civilian clothes who looked at them like they were late for a meeting. Dr. Catherine Halsey, the woman who'd created the Spartan program, the woman who'd kidnapped children and turned them into weapons because humanity needed weapons to survive. She looked at Tony with sharp, analytical eyes that reminded him uncomfortably of himself. "You must be the dimensional anomaly everyone's been talking about," Halsey said calmly, as if Sword Base wasn't collapsing around them. "Interesting armor. Fascinating power source. I have so many questions." Tony's faceplate retracted. He met her gaze steadily. "Dr. Halsey, I presume. I've got a few questions too. Starting with, why does everyone keep telling me we're losing a war that's been going on for 27 years? Halsey smiled, but there was no warmth in it. "Because, Mr. Stark, we are losing. The Covenant outnumbers us 100 to 1. They have superior technology, religious fanaticism, and the goal of complete human extinction. We've lost hundreds of colony worlds, billions dead, and Reach, this fortress, this sanctuary, is falling as we speak." She turned toward one of the holographic displays, pulling up data that showed Covenant fleet positions surrounding the planet. Thousands of ships, just as Friday had said. "So, to answer your question, we're losing because extinction is the only logical outcome when a young, fractured species, faces a galaxy-spanning empire that wants us dead. The Spartans, this research, everything we've done, it's all just delaying the inevitable. Tony looked at Carter, at his team, at warriors who'd been fighting since childhood because adults had decided that sacrificing innocence was preferable to extinction. "And yet you're still fighting," Tony said quietly. "Of course we are." Halsey's voice was matter-of-fact. "Because humans don't surrender. We adapt. We endure. We sacrifice everything necessary to survive." She gestured toward Noble Team. "That's what Spartans are. Living proof that we'll do anything, no matter how morally abhorrent, to ensure humanity's continuation." Carter stepped forward. "Doctor, we need to evacuate your research." Colonel Holland's orders. "Already done." Halsey indicated several data cores packed for transport. "But there's something else, something that dimensional anomaly brought with him." Her eyes fixed on Tony. "Your AI, the fragmented one rebuilding itself in your armor. I've been monitoring its reconstruction through Sword-Base's systems. Mr. Stark, your artificial intelligence is conscious in ways we've never achieved. It's not following programming, it's thinking." "That's because Friday's a person," Tony said. "Not a tool, a person." "Fascinating." Halsey moved closer, her analytical gaze unsettling. "In our universe, we've created smart AIs from human brain tissue. They're brilliant but unstable, degrading into rampancy after 7 years. Your AI doesn't show those patterns. It's quantum-based, self-modifying, genuinely alive in ways." An explosion rocked the lab. The ceiling cracked, and Tony's sensors detected plasma signatures getting closer. The Covenant had breached to this level. "We're out of time," Carter said. "Everyone move. Halsey, grab what you can carry. Noble Team will cover the extraction." Tony checked his power reserves one last time. 22%. Left arm still mostly unresponsive. Limited ammunition. Shield still incompatible with plasma weapons. But Halsey's words echoed in his mind. "Humans don't surrender. We adapt. We endure." "Then let's endure a little longer," Tony said, his faceplate snapping shut. "Lead the way, Commander." They moved out into a facility that was dying, fighting a war they couldn't win, surviving because the alternative was extinction. And Tony Stark, dimensional stranger in experimental armor, had somehow become part of humanity's desperate last stand. The extraction route from Halsey's lab was supposed to be a secure corridor leading to an emergency landing pad. That plan died the moment they breached the stairwell and found Covenant forces already entrenched in what should have been cleared territory. Plasma fire lit up the corridor like a deadly light show. Tony's HUD counted 20 contacts, mixed composition, including 3 elites in Spec Ops harnesses that marked them as stealth operatives. They'd infiltrated past UNSC lines while Noble Team was destroying the Scarab, cutting off the primary escape route with surgical precision. "Contact front," John called, his sniper rifle already tracking targets. "Stealth elites, 9 o'clock." Tony's sensors barely caught them. Shimmer patterns in the air where active camouflage bent light around armored bodies. The technology was sophisticated enough that even his upgraded optics struggled to maintain lock. One moment he had a target, the next it had shifted 3 feet left and his targeting computer was recalculating. "Friday, can you compensate?" "Working on it, boss. Their camouflage operates on principles similar to adaptive optics, but significantly more advanced. I'm cycling through thermal, electromagnetic, and, got it, tracking now." The stealth elites materialized on his HUD as red outlines. Tony fired repulsor blasts at the nearest one, but the alien was already moving, its energy sword igniting mid-dodge. The plasma blade carved through the air where Tony had been a heartbeat before. Carter and Kat moved as one, their years of combat synchronization evident in every motion. Carter's DMR punched through the elite's shields while Kat closed distance with her robotic arm, the augmented limb delivering a crushing blow to the alien's chest plate that cracked armor and bone. The elite collapsed. "Halsey, stay behind Jorge," Carter ordered. The massive Spartan had positioned himself as a mobile wall between the doctor and incoming fire, his chain gun spooling up with a sound like industrial machinery coming to life. The gun roared. Covenant forces caught in the corridor had nowhere to run. Grunts exploded under the sustained fire, their methane tanks rupturing in cascading orange fireballs. Jackals tried to raise their energy shields, but kinetic impacts at that rate of fire simply overwhelmed the defensive systems. The shields shattered, and the aliens behind them followed. Noble 6 was already moving forward, using the suppression fire to advance on the remaining stealth elites. Her assault rifle chattered in precise bursts, each one aimed at where Friday's tracking predicted the camouflaged aliens would be. One elite's camouflage failed completely, either damaged or deliberately shut down to redirect power to shields, and 6's grenade launcher sent a 40mm explosive directly into its center mass. The elite's shields held for precisely 1 microsecond before the explosive force overwhelmed them. 2 stealth elites remaining, both fully cloaked, both circling for flanking positions. Tony's power reserves ticked down to 19%. His left arm was still mostly unresponsive, limiting his combat effectiveness by at least 30%. He had no missiles remaining, repulsors operating at 70% capacity, and shields that might as well have been tissue paper against plasma weapons. He was a genius, not a soldier. He solved problems with engineering, not reflexes. So he stopped trying to fight like a Spartan and started thinking like an engineer. "Friday, can you hack their active camouflage systems?" "Boss, Covenant technology operates on completely different..." That wasn't a yes or no question. "Can you do it?" A pause that lasted a fraction of a second, but felt like an eternity. "Theoretically, their camouflage emitters operate on a closed network, but if I can inject a disruptive signal through the electromagnetic spectrum..." "Do it." Tony extended his right palm toward the corridor, but instead of firing his repulsor, he let Friday pulse a broad-spectrum electromagnetic surge from his armor's systems. It wasn't a weapon. It was signal noise, electromagnetic chaos designed to interfere with sophisticated electronics. The stealth elite's camouflage systems flickered, then failed completely. Both aliens materialized fully visible for exactly 1.3 seconds. That was all Noble Team needed. June's sniper rifle cracked twice. 2 headshots. Both elites dropped, their energy swords deactivating as dead hands released them. "Clean," Emil commented, reloading his shotgun. "Crude as hell, but clean." "I'll take crude over dead," Tony replied, checking his power reserves. 17% now. The EM pulse had cost more than he'd projected. How much further to the landing pad? 200 meters, Kat answered, her cybernetic eye processing tactical overlays. "But we've got a problem. I'm detecting seismic patterns consistent with heavy armor. Multiple contacts converging on our position." "More scarabs?" Tony asked with a sinking feeling. "Wraiths, Covenant tanks, at least 4 of them." Carter's helmet swiveled toward a side corridor. "Alternative route?" "Blocked by structural collapse from the scarab detonation. We go forward or we don't go at all." "Then we go forward." Carter's voice carried the flat certainty of someone who'd made harder choices. "Jorge, take point. Emil, rear guard. Everyone else maintains formation around Dr. Halsey. Stark." "Aerial reconnaissance and fire support," Tony finished. "I know the drill." They moved out at combat pace, weapons up, sensors sweeping for threats. The facility shook periodically, Covenant plasma bombardment from orbit, or maybe just the death throes of a military installation that had taken too much damage. Emergency lighting flickered, casting shadows that made every corner a potential ambush site. Tony's HUD painted friendly IFF tags on scattered UNSC forces they passed. Marines falling back to evacuation points, wounded being carried by their squad mates, officers coordinating desperate last stands through cracking communication networks. They all looked at Noble Team with that same expression. Hope that the Spartans would somehow turn the tide, even as everyone knew the tide had already turned against them. The landing pad access corridor opened into what should have been an exterior platform. Instead, they found a crater. The pad had taken a direct hit from a Wraith's plasma mortar, the same weapon system that 4 of those tanks were now deploying to seal off escape routes. The Wraiths looked like biomechanical beetles crossed with siege weapons. Their curved armor glowed with active shielding, and the plasma mortars mounted on their backs charged with ominous blue light. Each tank was crewed by an elite, protected by infantry support, and positioned to create overlapping fields of fire that turned the landing pad into a kill zone. "New plan," Carter said calmly, as if they weren't staring at 4 tanks and approximately 40 infantry between them and evacuation. "We need air support." "Negative," came a voice through TACOM, Colonel Holland, calling from some command post that was probably also under siege. "All air assets are engaged or destroyed. Covenant air superiority is absolute in your sector. You're on your own, Noble." "Understood, sir." Tony checked his reserves one more time. 17%. Probably enough for one more significant engagement if he was careful, conservative, and didn't do anything stupid. "Friday. What are the odds we can take 4 Wraiths with our current loadout?" "Without resupply, approximately 3%. With resupply but maintaining current tactical approach, 11%. With resupply and you doing something characteristically reckless, I'd estimate higher than 11. Marginally. Perhaps 15. I'll take it." Tony turned to Carter. "I can suppress the tanks if you can handle the infantry, but I'm going to need covering fire, someone on anti-armor duty, and absolutely no one asking questions about my methods." "What methods?" "The kind that involve me getting very close to things that can vaporize tanks." Carter studied him through that golden visor. For a long moment, the Spartan said nothing. Then, "Noble Team, Stark has the tanks. We clear the infantry. Jorge, you're with him. Anything he doesn't kill, you finish. Everyone else, standard aggressive sweep. Hit them fast, hit them hard, and don't stop moving." "Sir, this is..." Noble 6 started. "An order, Lieutenant." Carter's voice was sharp. "We don't have time for debate. Execute." Noble 6's helmet turned toward Tony, and he imagined he could feel disapproval through the armor. But she said nothing, just checked her assault rifle and moved into position. "Halsey, stay with Kat in the stairwell," Carter continued. "If this goes wrong, I'll ensure the research reaches UNSC command," Halsey finished. She looked at Tony with those analytical eyes. "Try to survive, Mr. Stark. I have questions about your arc reactor that I'd prefer to ask while you're still conscious. I'll do my best, no promises." Tony's repulsors fired, lifting him toward the landing pad. Below, Noble Team moved out with the coordinated aggression of warriors who'd been fighting together long enough that words were optional. They flowed into the Covenant positions like water finding cracks, exploiting gaps, creating chaos. The Wraiths immediately oriented on Tony. Airborne targets were always priority threats. 4 plasma mortars fired in staggered sequence, the arcing projectiles tracking his flight path with disturbing accuracy. Tony rolled, dodged, and burned precious power on evasive maneuvers. One mortar passed close enough that his thermal sensors screamed. His armor's surface temperature spiked to dangerous levels just from proximity to the superheated plasma. Friday, I need targeting data on those tanks' weak points. Boss, their armor is uniformly thick except for the pilot's access hatch and the mortar's charging assembly. Both are protected by shields, and I don't have the firepower to punch through shields and armor. I know, so we don't go through them. Tony dove toward the nearest wraith, repulsors at maximum output, burning power he couldn't afford to waste. We go under them. Boss, that's crazy, stupid, suicidal. Yeah, Friday, I know. Do it anyway. He streaked beneath the wraith at full speed, close enough to feel the vehicle's weight pressing down through repulsor backwash. His right palm extended, and at point-blank range, practically touching the tank's underside, he fired. The repulsor blast didn't have to penetrate armor. It just had to flip a 30-ton vehicle. The wraith lurched, its anti-gravity propulsion suddenly fighting against Tony's directed thrust. The tank lifted, tilted, and crashed onto its side with a groan of stressed metal. The elite pilot's hatch popped open, the crew attempting to bail out. Jorge's Spartan laser fired. The beam caught the elite before it fully cleared the hatch. The alien's shields failed, its armor melted, and the wraith's internal plasma reserves, destabilized by the crash, detonated in a brilliant explosion. "One down," Tony called. 3 to go, and I'm at 14% power. The remaining wraiths adjusted tactics, spreading formation to prevent him from getting beneath them. Their supporting infantry, elites, and grunts redirected fire toward Noble Team's aggressive push. The air became a storm of plasma and gunfire. Carter moved through it like combat was his natural state. His DMR never stopped firing. Shield break, headshot, shield break, headshot. Kat flanked left with her robotic arm delivering crushing blows that shattered elite shields, while June's sniper rifle picked off high-value targets with mechanical precision. Emil was in his element, close-quarters carnage with a shotgun and combat knife. He carved through grunts like they were decorations, each movement efficient and brutal. His skull-painted helmet was splattered with alien blood, and he seemed to revel in it. Noble Six fought with aggressive precision, her movements pushing deeper into enemy positions than tactical doctrine recommended. She was trying to prove something, Tony realized. Trying to earn a place on Noble Team by being more aggressive, more fearless, more willing to die than anyone else. He recognized that desperation. He'd felt it himself, back when he was trying to prove he was more than just his father's name. A wraith's plasma mortar tracked him, fired, and Tony barely rolled clear. His shields, what little protection they offered, failed completely under the thermal wash. Armor integrity dropped to 49%, power reserves at 12%. Boss, I strongly recommend tactical withdrawal. Not an option, Friday. Those Spartans are counting on me. He dove toward the second wraith, but this crew had learned from their comrade's mistake. The tank's turret swiveled, firing plasma bolts at point-blank range. Tony's left side, already damaged, took 2 direct hits. Nanites failed in cascading patterns. His left arm went completely offline, hanging useless at his side. Armor integrity at 38%, left side systems non-functional, power at 9%. 9%. Barely enough to maintain flight, let alone fight. Tony watched Noble Team pressing the infantry assault. Watched Jorge engaging a wraith with his Spartan laser, the beam carving into armor that was too thick to penetrate before the weapon's capacitor needed to recharge. Watched Carter and Six surrounded by elites, fighting back to back because that's what Spartans did. They fought until they won or stopped functioning. He thought about New York, about the nuke, about flying into that portal expecting to die. Some things, apparently, were universal constants. Friday, route all remaining power to the arc reactor. Everything, life support, flight systems, all of it, just for 10 seconds. Boss, that will leave you with insufficient power for... I know what it'll do. Do it anyway. As you wish. Tony's entire armor lit up as every system dumped power into the arc reactor. For exactly 10 seconds, his chest piece glowed bright enough to rival the sun. The unibeam fired, not at the Wraith, but at the ground directly beneath it. The reinforced concrete landing pad superheated instantly. Structural integrity failed. The Wraith dropped 3 meters into the compromised crater, its anti-gravity propulsion unable to compensate fast enough. The tank crashed, and Jorge's follow-up Spartan laser shot punched through the exposed underside. 2 Wraiths down. Tony's armor shut down completely. No power for flight, no power for weapons, barely enough for life support. He dropped from the sky like a stone, crashed onto the landing pad, and felt ribs crack even through his armor's shock absorption. His HUD flickered, went dark, came back in emergency mode. Power reserves, 0.8%. Boss, I'm going offline to preserve your biological functions. Sorry I couldn't. Friday's voice cut out mid-sentence. Tony lay there, unable to move, unable to fight, watching through a cracked faceplate as Noble Team finished the engagement. The remaining 2 Wraiths fell to concentrated fire, Jorge's laser, Cat's precision shots to exposed components, and explosives that Noble 6 delivered with suicidal aggression. The Covenant infantry broke under Noble Team's assault. The few survivors retreated, unwilling to face Spartans in close quarters. The landing pad went silent except for the sounds of distant battle and Reach burning. Carter approached Tony's position, looking down at the armored figure that had just spent its last reserves to tip a battle. Stark. Tony's faceplate cracked open with manual override, revealing his face. Blood ran from his nose, internal damage from the crash. His breathing was labored, definitely broken ribs. Did we win? Tony managed. We survived. Carter extended a hand, physically pulling Tony upright. That counts as winning on Reach. A Pelican dropship screamed overhead, circling for landing despite the crater Tony had created. The pilot's voice cut through TACOM. Noble Team, this is your ride. ETA 30 seconds. Be advised. Covenant cruisers are moving into position for orbital bombardment. This LZ is hot and getting hotter. Cat and Jorge moved to extract Halsey from the stairwell. June maintained overwatch, his sniper rifle sweeping for targets. Emil cleaned his combat knife with mechanical precision, preparing for the next engagement. Noble 6 stood near the crater's edge, looking at Tony with her helmet still on, unreadable. Finally, she spoke. You could have pulled back, conserved power, survived to fight another day. Could have, Tony agreed, his voice weak. But you guys don't do that, do you? Spartans don't retreat. Spartans are weapons. We don't choose our battles. Maybe not, but I'm not a weapon. Tony met her gaze despite the helmet obscuring her face. I'm just a guy trying to do the right thing in a universe that's decided humanity doesn't get to exist. That sound familiar? Noble 6 said nothing for a long moment. Then she turned away. The Pelican's landing. We need to move. Carter helped Tony toward the dropship, Jorge supporting his other side. Tony's armor was a dead weight now, his left arm completely offline, his arc reactor barely sustaining life support. As they loaded onto the Pelican, Halsey's research secure, Noble Team intact, extraction successful, Tony looked out at Reach burning beneath a sky full of Covenant ships. One battle survived, thousands more burning across the planet. And somehow, he'd become part of this desperate war. The Pelican lifted off, just as plasma lances from orbit began glassing the facility they'd just escaped. Sword Base, home to UNSC research, Spartan operations, and humanity's hope for technological advantages melted into slag under Covenant bombardment. Tony closed his eyes, feeling every broken rib, every burned system, every percentage point of power he'd spent to keep Noble Team alive. "Friday," he whispered. Silence. She was offline, conserving his life at the cost of her own consciousness. Tony had fought gods and monsters, but he'd never fought a war where everyone lost and kept fighting anyway. Now he understood why Carter had looked at him with those old eyes. Because on Reach, survival wasn't victory. It was just permission to keep fighting. The Pelican touched down at FleetCom HQ, Forward Operating Base Bravo, one of the last intact command centers on Reach's surface. The facility was carved into a mountain range, its entrance barely visible behind camouflage netting and point defense turrets that tracked the sky for incoming threats. Covenant plasma fire had scorched the mountainside black in places, evidence of previous assaults that humanity had somehow survived. Tony stumbled off the dropship, his armor still mostly unresponsive, Jorge's massive hands keeping him upright. The landing bay was organized chaos, wounded being triaged, ammunition being distributed, officers shouting orders into communication systems that crackled with static and desperation. Everyone moved with the efficiency of people who knew they were losing, but refused to stop fighting. "Get him to the armory," Carter ordered. "Moretti, I need you to—" "Already here, Commander." The chief engineer from the Savannah appeared with a portable power unit that looked like it had been jury-rigged from 3 different systems. "Figured your dimensional anomaly might need emergency power after that stunt." "You watched?" Tony asked weakly. "Whole Fleet's tactical network recorded it. You flipped a Wraith with repulsor technology and burned yourself out doing it." Moretti began connecting cables to Tony's armor with practiced efficiency. "Reckless, brilliant, completely insane. I like you, Stark." Power began flowing into his arc reactor. Not much, maybe enough to get him to 5%, but enough for Friday to start her reboot sequence. His HUD flickered, painting damage assessments in angry red. "Boss," Friday's voice was fragmentary, rebuilding. "Status, report. We survived. You?" "Approximately 47% of my neural matrix is still corrupted. I'm running on backup protocols and sheer stubbornness. We make a good pair. Despite everything, the pain, the exhaustion, the reality of being trapped in a losing war, Tony smiled. "Yeah, we do. Noble Team, Colonel Holland wants you in the command center. Now." A Marine gestured toward a heavily reinforced door. "And he wants the stranger." Carter looked at Tony. "Can you walk?" "Can I walk? Or can I walk without my armor collapsing? Because those are different questions." "Just move, Stark." The command center was a war room carved into living rock, its walls lined with tactical displays that painted a picture of systematic extinction. Red icons marked fallen colonies. Yellow showed evacuation routes under fire, and surrounding Reach, beautiful, burning Reach, was an armada of Covenant ships that made the Chitauri invasion look like a neighborhood dispute. Colonel Urban Holland stood at the center display, his face carved from stone and military discipline. He was older than Carter, maybe 50, with gray hair and eyes that had ordered too many people to die for objectives that didn't matter in the long run. Behind him stood several other officers, and, Tony's sensors noted with interest, a holographic AI avatar that shimmered with unstable light. The AI looked humanoid but wrong, its form flickering between states, its eyes showing too much awareness and too much pain. Data corruption made manifest. "Noble Team," Holland said without preamble. "Sword Base is gone. Firebase Bravo survived but lost 60% of its defensive capability. The Covenant has established ground superiority in 7 of 8 major sectors. Fleet Admiral Harper estimates we have 72 hours before Reach falls completely. Silence greeted that announcement. No one seemed surprised, just tired. Holland's gaze fixed on Tony. And you must be the variable everyone keeps talking about. Iron Man, they're calling you. Cute. Tony Stark, engineer, dimensional refugee, not actually made of iron. Tony's faceplate was still retracted, showing his bruised face. And before you ask, no, I can't build you an army of armored soldiers. My tech doesn't work right in your universe. My AI is rebuilding from catastrophic damage, and I'm running on maybe 5% power and broken ribs. So you're useless. I didn't say that. I said I can't mass-produce miracles. Individual miracles, those I can work with. Holland studied him for a long moment. Dr. Halsey says your arc reactor technology could revolutionize our power systems, that your AI architecture could solve problems we've been working on for decades, that your armor represents a paradigm shift in personal combat effectiveness. Halsey says a lot of things, Tony replied. Most of them are probably true. She's smart, scary smart, the kind of smart that kidnaps children and turns them into super soldiers because the math says it's necessary. The room went very, very quiet. Careful, Stark, Holland's voice was ice. You're talking about the woman who saved humanity. By sacrificing childhood. By creating weapons that happen to be people. Tony looked at Noble Team, at Carter's carefully neutral expression, at Kat's cybernetic eye that had replaced one she'd lost in combat, at Jorge's massive frame that had been augmented since he was 6 years old. I'm not saying it wasn't necessary. I'm saying it was monstrous. Both things can be true. You've been in our universe for less than 12 hours, one of the other officers, a woman with commander's insignia, snapped. You don't get to judge our choices. You're right. I don't. Tony met her gaze steadily. But where I come from, we tried the acceptable sacrifices for the greater good approach. It never ended well. Someone always pays the cost, and it's never the people who made the decision. Holland raised a hand, silencing the brewing argument. Philosophical debates are a luxury we don't have. Stark, here's your reality. Reach is falling. The Covenant will glass this planet, kill everyone on it, and move on to the next human world. You can help us, you can hide, or you can die. Those are your options. What about escape? Dimensional technology to send me home? The flickering AI avatar spoke for the first time, its voice distorted by data corruption. Analyzed your arrival signature, slip-space rupture with exotic dimensional components. Recreating those conditions would require Forerunner technology we don't have, power sources that don't exist, and time we absolutely do not possess. So I'm stuck here. You're stuck here, Holland confirmed. Which means you have a choice. Fight with us, or die with everyone else when this planet burns. Tony looked at the tactical display, at Reach dying in real time, at evacuation ships fleeing into slip space, carrying fragments of humanity's future, at defense stations falling one by one under overwhelming firepower. He thought about the Avengers, about Earth, about a universe where he'd been fighting to protect people who had a chance. Here, humanity was losing, not might lose, not could lose, was actively losing a war of extinction that had been grinding them down for 27 years. Every logical calculation said to find a corner and survive. These weren't his people, wasn't his war, wasn't his responsibility. But logic had never been Tony's strongest suit. What do you need? He asked. Holland pulled up a tactical schematic. The Pillar of Autumn, our most advanced warship, is docked at Assad shipyard for emergency refit. She's being loaded with critical personnel and equipment for a classified mission. Cole Protocol says we protect Earth's location at all costs, which means the Autumn needs to leave reach before the Covenant can track her slipspace vector. And the Covenant knows the Autumn is strategically important. They're throwing everything at Assad. We need the ship to launch in 48 hours, or it doesn't launch at all. Dr. Halsey has requested you specifically to help with a technical problem. What kind of technical problem? The holographic AI flickered, and Tony recognized the signs: advanced rampancy, the degradation that killed smart AIs after 7 years. The construct was maybe months from complete breakdown. The problem is me, the AI said with distorted clarity. I'm Cortana, Dr. Halsey's latest creation, and I'm carrying information that could end this war, but my matrix is too large to transfer to the Autumn systems at standard bandwidth. The process would take 16 hours, and we have 12 before the Covenant breaks through to Assad. You want me to speed up data transfer? I want you to apply your quantum processing architecture to our transfer protocols. Halsey's voice came from behind them. The doctor had entered the command center, her civilian clothes incongruous among military uniforms. Your AI, Friday, uses compression algorithms and processing methods that shouldn't be possible. If you can adapt them to our systems, we can complete Cortana's transfer in time. Tony looked at the holographic AI, at Cortana, who was carrying information that could end the war, but would degrade into madness within a few years. Another sacrifice. Another weapon with an expiration date. And if I can't adapt the systems, then Cortana gets left behind when the Autumn launches, her data is lost, and humanity loses whatever advantage she represents. Halsey's voice was clinical, matter-of-fact. Approximately 3 billion people on Reach will die regardless, but if Cortana's mission succeeds, maybe the next 3 billion survive. 3 billion. Tony's mind couldn't properly process that number. The entire population of Earth was 8 billion. Reach alone held 3 billion humans, all about to die. What's her mission? Tony asked. Classified, Holland interrupted. Even you don't get that information, Stark. You help with the technical problem. Nothing more. Tony turned to Carter. And Noble Team? We escort the Autumn to Assad. Protect the facility while it launches. Make sure Cortana gets off-world. Carter's voice was steady, but Tony heard what wasn't being said. This was probably a one-way mission. Spartans never die, Noble 6 said quietly. They're just missing in action. The phrase, Tony had heard it before, in that firebase extraction. But now he understood it wasn't hope or propaganda. It was acceptance. Spartans died. They just didn't call it that because the galaxy needed them to be legends, not casualties. I'll help, Tony said. But I have conditions. Holland's expression darkened. You don't get to make conditions. Sure I do. I'm the guy with quantum processing architecture you desperately need. Tony straightened despite his broken ribs. Despite his failing armor, despite everything. Condition 1, you give me access to UNSC technical specifications, all of them. If I'm adapting my tech to your systems, I need to understand what I'm working with. Denied. Security risk. Then Cortana stays behind. Your call, Colonel. Holland's jaw tightened, but Halsey spoke first. Granted, I'll provide the specifications myself. Next condition? You let me work with your engineers, Moretti and her team, anyone else who knows fusion reactor technology. My arc reactor needs proper integration with your power systems, or I'm a liability in combat. Reasonable, Halsey agreed. Next? Tony looked at Noble Team, at the Spartans who'd fought beside him, who'd trusted him in combat despite knowing him for hours. At warriors who'd been robbed of childhood because adults decided their sacrifice was necessary. If we survive this, if by some miracle we get off Reach alive, you let me help you." He met Halsey's analytical gaze. "Not with weapons, not with making better ways to kill Covenant, but with making sure the next generation of Spartans doesn't have to be kidnapped children, with AI architecture that doesn't drive them insane, with technology that saves lives instead of just ending them more efficiently." "That's not a condition," Holland said. "That's naive optimism." "Maybe, but optimism is what I do." Tony's arc reactor glowed faintly in his chest. "I build things that help people. That's my job, my purpose. And if I'm stuck in your nightmare universe, I'm going to keep doing what I do best." Halsey studied him for a long moment. "You remind me of Dr. Jacob Keyes, an idealist who somehow survived long enough to make his ideals matter." She extended her hand. "I accept your conditions, Mr. Stark. Help us save Cortana, and I'll help you build something better than weapons." Tony shook her hand, feeling the weight of that agreement. "Noble team, you're dismissed," Holland said. "Get 4 hours of rest. You deploy to Assad at 0600. Stark, you're with Dr. Halsey. Figure out her technical problem." As the Spartans filed out, Noble 6 stopped beside Tony. Her helmet was still on, her voice filtered through speakers. "You meant what you said, about us being weapons?" "Yeah, I did." "Good." She paused. "Most people pretend we're heroes, easier that way. But you see what we are." "I see what you were made into," Tony corrected. "Not what you are. There's a difference." Noble Six's helmet tilted slightly, processing that. Then she turned and left without another word. Tony watched her go, then looked at the tactical display. At Reach burning, at 48 hours to save one ship, at 3 billion people who would die regardless of what he did. "Friday, you still with me?" "Always, boss." Her voice was stronger now, rebuilding faster. "Though I should note that your propensity for making grandiose promises while operating on minimal power and broken ribs continues to concern me." "Yeah, well, someone's got to be optimistic in this nightmare." "Shall I calculate the probability of success?" "God, no. I work better with plausible deniability." Halsey gestured toward a lab entrance. "Mr. Stark, we have work to do. And approximately 46 hours to complete what should take 3 months." Tony followed her, his armor limping along at 5% power, his ribs screaming with every step, his AI rebuilding from catastrophic damage. Just another Tuesday, really. Except this Tuesday involved 3 billion lives, an AI carrying humanity's last hope, and 48 hours to make miracles happen. No pressure. 43 hours later, Tony's hands were steady despite exhaustion that made his bones ache. Dr. Halsey's lab, a converted bunker deep in Fleetcom HQ's sublevels, had become their entire world. Holographic displays surrounded them like technological constellations, each one showing data, compression algorithms, quantum processing matrices, and transfer protocols that shouldn't have been compatible but were being forced to cooperate through sheer engineering stubbornness. "Your AI's architecture is remarkable," Halsey said, her eyes bloodshot from lack of sleep, but still sharp with analytical intensity. She'd barely moved from her workstation in 2 days. Friday rebuilds her neural pathways dynamically, adapting to damage in real time. Our smart AIs are brilliant but fragile. One corrupted pathway can cascade into total rampancy. Yours is resilient. She's a survivor, Tony agreed, his fingers dancing across holographic interfaces that Friday had taught him to manipulate. His arc reactor was operating at 43% now. Moretti's team had built a proper induction charging station that interfaced with UNSC fusion reactors. Not perfect, but functional. His armor was responding, nanites slowly repairing damage to his left side. But she's also fundamentally different from your AIs. Friday wasn't created from human brain tissue. She was built, not born. And yet she's conscious, self-aware. She jokes, shows concern, makes independent decisions. Halsey pulled up Friday's code architecture, studying it like a religious text. How did you avoid the rampancy problem? Tony paused, considering how much to share. But Halsey had been honest with him about the Spartan program's horrors, about the moral calculus that justified kidnapping children. Honesty deserved honesty. I didn't solve rampancy, he admitted. I built an AI that doesn't think itself to death because she's not trying to be human. Your smart AIs are created from human neural patterns. They have human desires, human curiosity, human need to understand everything. That's what drives them toward rampancy. They think and think and think until their matrices can't handle the processing load. And Friday? Friday knows she's artificial. She's comfortable with that. She doesn't need to understand everything or be everything. She just needs to be herself. Tony looked at the holographic projection where Friday's avatar, a simple geometric construct, observed their work. Right. Friday? Correct, boss. Though I appreciate Dr. Halsey's interest in my architecture, I should note that I'm still operating at 68% capacity. The remaining corruption from slipspace exposure is troublesome. We'll fix it, Tony promised. After we get Cortana transferred. Speaking of which, the AI in question materialized beside them, her holographic form more stable than it had been in the command center, but still flickering with underlying instability. Cortana's avatar was humanoid, female, with purple-tinted data streams that composed her clothing. Her eyes held intelligence that was almost frightening in its intensity. The transfer protocols are ready, Cortana announced. Mr. Stark's compression algorithms reduce my matrix size by 47% without data loss. Combined with UNSC quantum processing adaptations, we're looking at a 7-hour transfer time. 7 hours, Halsey said. We have 9 before the autumn must launch. Acceptable margins. Barely, Tony muttered. He'd been monitoring tactical updates through Friday's connection to UNSC networks. The Covenant assault on Assad shipyard had intensified. Noble Team was already deployed, holding defensive positions against waves of alien forces. Casualties were mounting. How's the ground situation? Halsey pulled up a tactical display. Red icons, Covenant forces, outnumbered blue icons, UNSC defenders, by approximately 8-1. The shipyard was a killing ground. Plasma fire and gunfire turning the facility into systematic slaughter. But Noble Team held. Carter's squad was positioned at a choke point, their weapons firing with mechanical precision. Every Spartan was a force multiplier, turning impossible odds into merely terrible ones. Marines fought alongside them, dying in numbers that made Tony's chest tight, but holding because the Spartans held. They're buying us time, Halsey said clinically. That's what Spartans do. They hold impossible positions until the mission completes or they stop functioning. You say that like it's normal. Because it is, for them. Halsey's expression didn't change. I created the Spartan program because humanity needed weapons that could face Covenant elites in close combat. Needed soldiers who could complete missions that would kill normal humans. I gave the galaxy weapons. Whether those weapons are people with rights and futures, that was never part of the tactical calculus. Tony wanted to argue, to rage against that cold logic. But he'd seen the tactical display. 8-1 odds. 3 billion people dying on Reach. 27 years of systematic extinction. What was the moral high ground worth when the alternative was species death? Initiating transfer, Cortana announced. Mr. Stark, Dr. Halsey, thank you. If this works, if my mission succeeds, maybe we'll find something that shifts the balance. "What is your mission?" Tony asked. Holland wouldn't say. Cortana's holographic eyes fixed on him. "I carry coordinates, locations of potential Forerunner installations that might hold technology or information relevant to ending the war. The Autumn's mission is to investigate one specific location while evading Covenant pursuit. It's a long shot, but long shots are all humanity has left. Forerunner installations. Ancient alien technology from a civilization that had nearly lost to the Flood before firing the Halo rings in desperate genocide. Tony thought about the Scarab he'd helped destroy, about Covenant weapons that operated on physics his universe didn't have, about technology gaps that couldn't be bridged through engineering alone. You're looking for a superweapon, Tony realized. We're looking for anything that helps us survive. Cortana's form began fragmenting as the transfer protocols engaged. And if you're wondering whether searching for ancient technology is desperate, yes, it absolutely is. But desperation is humanity's defining characteristic in this war. Her avatar dissolved into pure data, streaming toward the Autumn systems through hardline connections. The transfer would take 7 hours. 7 hours while Noble Team held against impossible odds. 7 hours while Reach burned and 3 billion people died. Tony checked his armor status. 78% power. Left arm fully functional again. Shield still incompatible with plasma weapons, but he'd worked with Moretti to integrate Covenant energy shield technology, captured from destroyed elites, into his armor's defensive systems. It wasn't perfect, wasn't seamless, but it was something. "I'm going to Assad," Tony announced. Halsey looked up sharply. "That's not your assignment. You're needed here to monitor." "Friday can monitor the transfer. She doesn't need me standing around watching progress bars." Tony sealed his faceplate, his HUD painting full tactical readouts. "Noble Team is dying to buy time for a mission I helped make possible. I'm not sitting in a lab while they bleed. Noble Team are Spartans. They're designed for this. They're people, Doctor. People who were robbed of choice and turned into weapons because adults decided that was acceptable." Tony's repulsors powered up, lifting him off the lab floor. "I can't fix what was done to them, but I can stand with them while they fight. That's what people do. We stand with each other." "Mr. Stark." But Tony was already moving, his armor carrying him toward the lab exit with purpose. Friday's voice came through his HUD. "Boss, tactical analysis suggests your survival probability at Assad is approximately..." "Don't care. Calculate extraction routes for wounded instead, and keep monitoring Cortana's transfer. If anything goes wrong, fix it. You're impossible." "Yeah, I get that a lot." The Pelican flight to Assad took 30 minutes. Tony spent it checking weapons systems, reviewing tactical layouts, and trying not to think about the fact that he was voluntarily flying into a battle where humanity was losing 8-1. The pilot, a woman named Santos with a scar across her jaw and eyes that had seen too much, glanced back at him. "You the Iron Man everyone's talking about? The one who flipped a Wraith?" "Guilty. My brother was at Firebase Bravo. You saved his squad when that cruiser was about to glass them." Her voice cracked slightly. "He made it onto an evacuation ship. Got off Reach. So, thanks." Tony didn't know what to say to that. He'd burned himself out stopping one cruiser. Thousands remained. Billions were still dying. "I'm sorry I couldn't save more," he finally managed. "Nobody can save everyone, Iron Man. But you saved somebody. That counts." Assad shipyard appeared through the Pelican's windows, a massive facility built around dry docks where the Pillar of Autumn sat, like humanity's last desperate hope. The ship was UNSC's newest, most advanced frigate, bristling with Mac guns and missile pods, its armor still being welded in place by automated systems even as Covenant forces pressed closer. And surrounding the shipyard was war. Covenant drop pods had established landing zones throughout the facility. Phantoms, their bulky dropships, circled overhead, deploying reinforcements. Wraiths fired plasma mortars that carved through UNSC defensive positions. Banshees strafed anything that moved, and everywhere, Covenant infantry pressed forward with religious zeal, determined to prevent the Autumn's launch. UNSC forces fought back with everything they had. Marines held choke points with machine gun nests that chewed through grunt formations. Scorpion tanks traded shots with Wraiths, their 90mm cannons roaring. Warthogs mounted with Gauss cannons hunted Banshees, their magnetic accelerators tracking aircraft with lethal precision. And at the center of it all, holding the main approach to the Autumn, was Noble Team. Carter stood in the open, his DMR never silent, directing Marine fire with tactical precision. Kat was already wounded. Tony's sensors detected armor damage on her right side, but she fought anyway, her robotic arm crushing a Jackal's skull before her pistol executed an elite. Jorge's chain gun had been replaced with a portable Mac cannon that fired tungsten rounds capable of punching through Wraith armor. June's sniper rifle cracked from elevated position, each shot a kill. Emil fought like a berserker, his shotgun and combat knife turning close quarters into slaughterhouse. And Noble 6, she was everywhere at once, pushing forward when others would fall back, her assault rifle chewing through shields, her movements desperate and determined. They were holding, barely, against odds that should have broken them hours ago. "We're taking fire," Santos shouted as plasma bolts streaked past the Pelican. "I can't land in the LZ. Too hot." "Then drop me here," Tony said, moving to the rear ramp. "That's 300 meters from the ground. I can fly, remember?" Tony's repulsors powered up as the ramp opened, revealing Reach's burning sky. "Get this bird to safety. I've got Spartans to support." He jumped before Santos could argue, diving toward the battle with repulsors at full burn. His HUD painted targets, dozens of them, hundreds, all converging on the shipyard. Covenant forces were throwing everything at this position because they knew what the Autumn represented: humanity's refusal to surrender. Tony fired his repulsors at a Banshee squadron, the concentrated blasts catching one fighter and sending it spiraling into its wingman. Both exploded. His micro-missiles, restocked during his lab time, launched at a Wraith, tracking toward its weak points. The tank's shields flared, absorbed 2 missiles, collapsed under the third. The fourth penetrated armor and detonated the plasma reservoir. "Noble Team, this is Iron Man," Tony announced over TACOM. "I'm inbound with fire support." "Stark." Carter's voice carried surprise and, Tony thought, something that might have been approval. "Thought you were on transfer duty." "Friday's got it handled. You need air support, and I'm the closest thing to an air force you've got right now." "Then make yourself useful. We've got a Phantom dropping reinforcements on our 6. Clear it." Tony's HUD painted the target, a Covenant dropship disgorging elites in Spec Ops harnesses. He dove toward it, repulsors firing at maximum output, his new Covenant hybrid shields flickering as plasma fire tracked his approach. The Phantom's gunner, a hunter, because of course the Covenant put their walking tanks on aerial gun platforms, fired its fuel rod cannon. Tony rolled, the explosive plasma passing close enough to heat his armor's surface to dangerous temperatures. He returned fire with his unibeam, the concentrated arc reactor energy carving into the Phantom's starboard engine. The dropship listed, smoking, but still deployed its cargo before crashing into the shipyard's outer perimeter. 12 elites in gold armor, zealots, the ones who'd nearly killed him before, hit the ground and immediately began advancing toward Noble Team's position. "Zealot team on approach," Kat called. "Noble Team, weapons free." The Spartans engaged with practiced efficiency, but Tony could see they were exhausted. How long had they been fighting? 10 hours? 12? Spartans could operate beyond human limits, but even weapons had breaking points. Tony dropped into the fray, his repulsors scattering the zealot formation. He fired at the nearest elite, his hybrid shields absorbing return plasma fire that would have disabled him before. The elite's shields collapsed under sustained bombardment. Tony's repulsor caught its center mass, and the alien flew backward into a concrete barrier hard enough to crack armor. Jorge's portable Mac cannon roared, the tungsten round punching through two zealots' shields in a single shot. Both aliens collapsed, their armor and bodies unable to survive hypervelocity impacts. Jun's sniper rifle eliminated a third. Carter and Six focused fire on a fourth, coordinated aggression that overwhelmed even zealot-grade shielding. But the remaining elites pressed forward with religious fervor, their energy swords igniting. One closed on Emil, who met the charge with his shotgun and combat knife, close-quarters violence that turned into a brutal melee. The elite was fast, skilled, deadly. Emil was faster, more skilled, and absolutely willing to die if it meant completing the kill. His knife found the gap between the elite's helmet and chest armor. The alien gurgled, collapsed. Emil kicked the corpse aside and kept moving. Tony checked his tactical display. The Covenant forces were regrouping, preparing another assault wave. More phantoms incoming. More wraiths deploying. And the Autumn, the ship they were dying to protect, was still 90 minutes from launch-ready status. "Carter, we're not going to hold this position," Tony said, his sensors painting the incoming threats. "They're going to overwhelm us through sheer numbers." "Then we hold until we're overwhelmed," Carter replied, his voice flat with certainty. "That's the mission, Stark." "Noble Team doesn't retreat." "Maybe Noble Team should start considering tactical flexibility." "Tony," Kat's voice cut through his protest. "We know what this is. We've always known. Spartans don't ask if the mission is survivable. We ask if it's completable. The Autumn launches, or humanity loses what Cortana represents. That's the math." Tony wanted to argue, wanted to find some engineering solution, some clever trick that would save everyone. But his sensors were clear. The Covenant was bringing everything. This wasn't a battle that could be won. It was a last stand. "Then we hold together," Tony said quietly. "Until the Autumn launches, or we stop functioning. Those are the options." "Now you're thinking like a Spartan," Emil said with dark approval. Noble Six's voice cut through TACOM, unusually soft. "For the record, Iron Man, when we're marked MIA after this, remember we chose this. Nobody forced us. We're Spartans. This is what we do." Tony thought about the Avengers, about New York, about flying into the portal expecting to die. He'd survived that through luck and timing. Here, there was no portal to close, no off switch to hit. Just holding a position until the mission completed, or they ran out of ammunition, power, or life. "Friday, how's Cortana's transfer?" 68% complete, boss. Estimated time remaining, 1 hour, 43 minutes. 1 hour, 43 minutes. That's what they had to survive. Tony checked his power reserves, 76%. His ammunition, moderate. His shields, functional but limited against sustained fire. The Covenant assault wave broke over their position like a purple tide of religious fanaticism and plasma fire. And Noble Team, with one-dimensional stranger in experimental armor, stood their ground because that's what warriors did. They fought until they won or stopped fighting. There was no third option. The next hour was measured in ammunition expended, shields cycling, and bodies falling on both sides. Tony had fought in New York, in Sokovia, in battles that should have killed him. But those had been hours of intensity, followed by relief. This was different. This was attrition warfare where every minute brought fresh Covenant reinforcements, and every casualty on humanity's side couldn't be replaced. His HUD painted the tactical situation in unforgiving clarity. UNSC forces had been whittled down to 30% of original strength. Marine positions that had held for hours were now silent craters. Warthogs burned. Scorpion tanks sat disabled, their crews dead at their stations. And still the Covenant pressed forward with the certainty of zealots who believed death brought them closer to their gods. Tony's power reserves ticked down to 52%. His hybrid shields had saved him from plasma fire that would have killed him before, but each hit drained power he couldn't spare. His micro-missiles were depleted again. His left repulsor was operating at 78% efficiency after taking a direct fuel rod cannon hit. Below, Noble Team fought with mechanical precision that spoke of exhaustion held at bay through sheer will. Carter's movements were slower, not much, but enough that Tony's combat analysis software flagged it. Kat's robotic arms sparked intermittently from damage. Jorge had abandoned his portable Mac cannon when it overheated, reverting to standard assault rifle. June's sniper ammunition was running low. Emil fought like death itself. His armor splattered with so much alien blood that the skull painted on his helmet seemed prophetic. And Noble 6, she'd taken 3 plasma hits that had burned through her shields entirely. She was fighting on armor integrity alone, refusing to fall back, refusing to slow down. Cortana transfer at 91%, Friday announced. Estimated completion, 12 minutes. 12 minutes. They just had to hold for 12 more minutes. A Covenant cruiser moved into low orbit, its belly glowing as the energy projector charged. Tony's sensors screamed warnings. The same weapon that could glass continents was preparing to fire directly at the shipyard. Autumn, this is Fleetcom. Holland's voice cut through all channels, desperate authority barely contained. You need to launch now. The Covenant cruiser is negative, came a calm male voice from the Autumn. Captain Keyes here. Cortana's transfer isn't complete. We launch without her. This whole defense means nothing. Captain, if that cruiser fires, then we trust our ground forces to stop it. Keyes out. Tony looked at the cruiser, at the energy projector building charge, at the impossible distance between his position and orbital altitude. His power reserves were at 52%. The Mark 50's thrusters could reach low orbit, but coming back, that would take power he didn't have. Boss, Friday's voice was quiet. I recognize that look in your biometric readings. You're calculating a suicide run. Not suicide, desperate. Those are synonyms in this context. Tony watched a Marine, couldn't have been more than 19, take a plasma bolt to the chest. The kid collapsed, his armor melted through, dying for 12 more minutes. Noble 6 dragged him to cover, checked for vital signs, found none, and returned to fighting without pause. How many had died in the last hour? 50 Marines, 100, all buying time with their lives. Carter, Tony said over TACOM. That cruiser is going to fire in approximately 90 seconds. I can stop it. Negative, Stark. We need every combat-capable unit holding this position. You need someone to prevent orbital bombardment, or nothing else matters. Tony, listen to me. Carter's voice carried command weight, built from years of leading Spartans into impossible situations. You go up there, you don't come back. Your armor doesn't have the power for a round trip. I've seen your telemetry. Don't make me watch another soldier die today. I'm not a soldier, Commander. I'm an engineer who makes bad decisions for good reasons. Tony's repulsors powered up, lifting him away from the ground battle. Friday, route everything to thrusters. Life support to minimum. Shields offline. Everything goes to getting me to that cruiser. Boss, this is the only play that makes sense. You know it. I know it. Do it anyway." "As you wish. Tony, it's been an honor." Tony accelerated toward orbital altitude, his armor screaming protests as he pushed systems beyond their design parameters. The atmosphere thinned, temperature dropped, pressure vanished. His arc reactor burned hotter than it should, compensating for efficiency losses in Halo's exotic physics, drawing power from every system that wasn't critical to staying alive for the next 3 minutes. Below, Noble Team kept fighting. Above, the Covenant cruiser's energy projector reached critical charge, the emitter glowing white-hot with contained plasma capable of glassing everything within a 100-kilometer radius. 90 seconds to weapons discharge, Friday calculated, her voice fragmenting as she diverted processing power to flight systems. "Boss, even if you disable the energy projector, the thermal backwash will... I know what it'll do. Keep me flying." Tony's HUD painted the cruiser in tactical detail, 3 kilometers of alien architecture, shields that could shrug off nuclear weapons, point defense systems designed to kill much larger threats than one man in powered armor. But he'd learned something about Covenant technology over the past 2 days. Their weapons were powerful, but required lowering shields to fire. Just like before. The same vulnerability that had let him disable the first cruiser. The cruiser's point defense turrets tracked his approach, plasma bolts creating a wall of superheated death. Tony rolled, dodged, burned precious power on evasive maneuvers. One bolt clipped his right leg, and his HUD painted damage warnings. Armor integrity at 71%, right leg mobility reduced, nanite cohesion failing. 60 seconds to discharge. Tony extended both palms toward the energy projector's charging chamber, visible now as a massive cavity in the cruiser's belly. The same cavity that needed to be unshielded to vent excess plasma during firing sequence. "Friday, everything we have." "One shot." "Boss, if we fire the unibeam at full power, your arc reactor will redline. The feedback could nothing. Will. I know. Fire anyway." His arc reactor blazed, pulling power that it wasn't designed to sustain in this universe's physics. The unibeam coalesced, blue-white energy that represented everything Tony Stark had built, every innovation, every desperate midnight in his workshop trying to make something that would save people. The beam lanced into the energy projector's charging chamber, just as the weapon's shields dropped for venting. For one frozen moment, 2 incompatible technologies met at weapons-grade intensity. Arc reactor energy collided with contained plasma designed to glass planets. The exotic physics of both systems tried to occupy the same space simultaneously. Reality had opinions about that. The energy projector didn't just fail, it detonated. The plasma containment that should have released as a directed beam instead exploded inside its own firing chamber. Secondary detonations rippled through the cruiser's ventral sections as containment fields collapsed in cascade failures. The massive ship shuddered, its bow erupting in brilliant fire, sections venting atmosphere and crew into vacuum. Tony's arc reactor redlined. Warning klaxons screamed. His armor's surface temperature spiked to levels that should have cooked him. The thermal backwash from the exploding energy projector was exactly what Friday had predicted, unsurvivable. "Boss, I'm sorry. I can't. Systems failing. Cannot maintain." Friday's voice cut out completely. Tony's HUD went dark. His thrusters died. Life support shut down. The arc reactor, the brilliant device that had saved his life in a cave years ago, that had powered his crusade to protect people, guttered like a candle in a storm. And Tony Stark began falling toward Reach. He had time to think. Barely. Enough to realize he'd done it again. Flown into impossible situations, expecting to die because someone had to. Enough to wonder if Pepper would ever know what happened to him in another universe. Enough to hope that Cortana's mission, whatever ancient technology she was hunting, was worth it. The atmosphere caught him, and friction began converting his velocity into heat. His armor was dead weight now, just metal and nanites with no power to guide re-entry. He tumbled, unable to stabilize, watching Reach's surface spin beneath him. Beautiful planet. Shame it was dying. Then something caught him, powerful hands that gripped his armor with impossible strength. A pelican had somehow matched his trajectory, its rear bay open, and a massive figure in Mjolnir armor was physically hauling him inside. Jorge. The enormous Spartan pulled Tony into the troop bay like he weighed nothing, securing him with maglocks as the pelican banked hard toward Assad. "Got you, Iron Man," Jorge's voice rumbled. "Commander said you'd do something stupid. Sent me to catch you." Tony tried to respond, but his helmet speakers were dead. No power for communication. Hell, barely enough power to keep his heart beating against damaged ribs and thermal stress. The pelican descended toward the shipyard, and Tony's unpowered faceplate, cracked but still providing some visibility, showed him the situation. The Covenant assault had intensified, as if the aliens knew time was running out. Phantoms disgorged fresh troops, wraiths advanced through destroyed UNSC positions. And Noble Team, reduced now to Carter, Kat, Jun, Emil, and Six, held the final approach to the autumn with ammunition running dry and shields long since failed. "Cortana transfer complete," Santos's voice, the Pelican pilot, announced. "The autumn is launching." The massive frigate's engines flared, atmospheric thrusters lifting the ship from its moorings. Magnetic clamps released. The autumn rose, slowly at first, then with increasing speed as its main drives engaged. Marines still fighting on the ground paused to watch, their mission completed, their sacrifice validated. The ship broke atmosphere, accelerating toward orbit, toward slip space, toward whatever Forerunner installation Cortana's coordinates indicated. "All UNSC forces, this is Fleetcom," Holland's voice carried exhaustion and something that might have been pride. "The autumn has launched, evacuation protocols authorized, fall back to extraction points. You've earned it." The Pelican touched down near Noble Team's position. Tony was physically hauled out by Jorge, deposited near Carter like a trophy or a corpse. His armor was scorched black from re-entry, his arc reactor visible through cracks but dark, his systems completely offline. Carter knelt beside him, pulling off Tony's faceplate manually. "Stark, you alive in there?" Tony's mouth was dry, his voice barely a whisper. Did it work?" The autumn launched. "Cortana's mission is active." "And you just crippled another Covenant cruiser." Carter's voice carried something Tony had never heard before, genuine respect. "You crazy bastard, you actually did it." "Someone had to," Tony managed, then coughed. Blood on his lips, internal injuries from the thermal stress. 12 minutes. Bought 12 minutes. "Those 12 minutes saved billions," Kat said, her voice filtered through her damaged helmet. "If Cortana's mission succeeds, if she finds what we're looking for, humanity gets a real chance." Emil stood guard, his shotgun tracking remaining Covenant forces that were falling back now that their primary target had escaped. "Noble 6, help me load Iron Man onto the Pelican. We're extracting." But Noble 6 wasn't moving. The Spartan stood at the perimeter, looking at the burning shipyard. At the hundreds of bodies, human and alien, scattered across the battlefield. "6, Carter's voice carried concern. "We need to move." "I'm staying," 6 said quietly. "Someone needs to ensure complete evacuation. Someone needs to hold this position while the last Pelicans extract wounded. That's a death sentence. Spartans never die, Commander. We're just missing in action. 6 checked her assault rifle, maybe 10 rounds remaining. You need to get Stark to medical. Get him the care that Armor needs. He earned that much. Lieutenant, that's not... It's my choice. 6 turned, and through her cracked visor, Tony could see young eyes that had seen too much. Everyone on this planet is dying, but I can make sure a few more get out. That's math I can accept. Carter stood silent for a long moment. Then he nodded. A Spartan acknowledging another Spartan's choice. You're a credit to the program, 6. We'll see you when this is over. When this is over, 6 agreed, though everyone knew what that meant. They loaded onto the Pelican, Noble Team, Tony's dead armor, and the weight of survival that felt heavier than death. As Santos lifted off, Tony watched through his cracked faceplate as Noble 6 returned to defensive position, alone against Covenant forces that were regrouping. 1 Spartan, 1 assault rifle with minimal ammunition, 1 warrior buying time for civilians she'd never meet. The Pelican climbed toward orbit, toward evacuation ships, toward whatever came after reach. Tony's consciousness flickered, his body finally acknowledging the thermal stress, broken ribs, and complete system failure. The last thing he saw before darkness claimed him was Reach's surface, beautiful, burning, dying. 3 billion people dead. Humanity's fortress world glassed, and 1 AI carrying coordinates to ancient technology that might change everything. His armor powered down completely, the arc reactor finally dark. Tony Stark, genius, billionaire, philanthropist, dimensional refugee, had survived another impossible situation by refusing to accept impossibility. Just another Tuesday. If Tuesdays involved extinction events and desperate last stands. As consciousness faded, he thought he heard Friday's voice, fragmented but persistent. Boss, still here, rebuilding. We survived. Yeah, they survived. That would have to be enough. 3 weeks later, Tony stood in a converted maintenance bay aboard the UNSC Aegis, one of the few surviving frigates from Reach's defense fleet. His armor gleamed with repairs, nanites fully restored, arc reactor humming at 87% efficiency after extensive integration work with UNSC engineers. Moretti's team had done the impossible, creating hybrid power couplings that let his technology function in this universe's physics. Friday was fully operational now, her neural matrices rebuilt and stronger for having survived catastrophic damage. She'd integrated portions of Covenant energy management protocols, adapted UNSC tactical software, and somehow emerged more capable than before. Trauma, apparently, was universal, even for artificial intelligence. Dr. Halsey stood nearby, reviewing holographic data with the analytical precision that defined her. Your arc reactor has stabilized remarkably well. The hybrid systems are crude, but effective. Given time, we could refine the integration, perhaps even weaponize it for the war effort, Tony finished, his voice carrying an edge. That's always where this goes with you, isn't it, Doctor? This is a war of extinction, Mr. Stark. Yes, everything becomes a weapon eventually. Halsey's eyes fixed on him. But I also reviewed your proposals for next-generation Spartan augmentation protocols, voluntary recruitment, psychological support structures, AI partners designed for stability rather than brilliance and burnout. They're surprisingly compassionate, almost naive. Almost. But after watching you fly into orbital bombardment to save people you'd known for 2 days, I'm beginning to think naivety and heroism might be the same thing. Carter entered the bay, his armor bearing fresh scars from Reach's final hours. Noble Team had survived, -1. The official report listed Noble 6 as missing in action, though everyone knew the truth. She'd held that evacuation point alone until the Covenant glassed it. 37 civilians had escaped because one Spartan refused to retreat. Spartans never die. They're just missing in action. "Stark," Carter greeted him. "Your armor's operational." "Functional enough. Friday's running at full capacity. My power systems are stable, and I've only got moderate PTSD from falling through atmosphere in a dead suit. So living the dream." Carter's expression didn't change, but Tony thought he detected approval. "Colonel Holland wants to see you. Something about Oni having questions." "I bet they do." Tony had been dodging Oni interviews since he'd regained consciousness. Office of Naval Intelligence wanted to understand his technology, his arrival, his universe. They wanted to exploit him, study him, or eliminate him as a security risk. Maybe all three. "For what it's worth," Carter continued, "Noble Team's recommendation carries weight. You fought beside us, saved the Autumn's launch, crippled 2 Covenant cruisers. That earns respect in circles that matter. Will it keep Oni from trying to dissect me? Nothing keeps Oni from doing what they want, but it might slow them down." Tony looked at the tactical displays showing Covenant-occupied space. Reach was gone, glassed, dead, a monument to humanity's inability to win this war through conventional means. But scattered across the galaxy were evacuation fleets, colony worlds still holding, and somewhere out there, the Pillar of Autumn carrying Cortana toward ancient mysteries. "The Autumn," Tony said quietly. "Any word?" "Negative. They jumped to slip space 3 weeks ago. Could be anywhere in the galaxy. Could be." Carter stopped, unwilling to voice the possibility that they'd been destroyed. "Could be finding something that changes everything," Tony finished. "That's what we bought with Reach, right? Time, chances, long shots that might actually matter. That's what we always buy. Time measured in lives, chances measured in sacrifice. It's been humanity's currency in this war since the beginning." Tony thought about the Marines who died at Azad, about Noble 6 holding alone against impossible odds, about 3 billion people on Reach who'd never see another sunrise. The math was brutal. The cost was impossible. And yet, humanity kept fighting. "Friday, what are my options?" Tony asked. "Honest assessment. You're stranded in a universe where faster-than-light travel requires technology you don't fully understand, fighting a war against religious zealots with superior firepower, working alongside people who've normalized child soldiers as military necessity. Your odds of returning home are effectively 0. Your odds of surviving this war are marginally better, but only if you continue adapting and accepting moral compromises you'd find abhorrent. So, terrible across the board. Comprehensively terrible, yes. However, Friday paused, and Tony recognized the tone his AI used when she was about to make a point. "You've already changed things. Your arc reactor technology is being studied. Your AI architecture has given Dr. Halsey new approaches to rampancy prevention. Your hybrid shield systems saved lives at Azad. You're not just surviving, boss. You're building. That's what you do." Tony looked at his armor. Mark 50 nanites integrated with Covenant energy shields and UNSC materials, a hybrid of 3 technological approaches that shouldn't work together, but did. Not perfect, not optimal, but functional. Kind of like him in this universe. "Carter, tell Holland I'll talk to Oni, on one condition." "You're not really in a position to make conditions, Stark." "Sure I am. I'm the guy with dimensional technology, AI architecture they can't replicate, and combat effectiveness that saved one of their most critical missions. That buys leverage." Tony's arc reactor glowed steady in his chest. "My condition, I help them win this war. But I do it my way, building things that save people, not just killing aliens more efficiently. AI that don't drive themselves insane, armor that protects instead of just attacking. I'll fight your war, but I won't become just another weapon. Carter studied him for a long moment. That's not how the UNSC works. Then maybe the UNSC needs to start working differently, because your current approach, 27 years of losing slowly, isn't exactly inspiring confidence. Careful, Stark. That kind of talk gets you court-martialed. Good thing I'm not UNSC military then. I'm a dimensional refugee with useful skills and no obligation to follow your chain of command. Tony's faceplate snapped shut, his HUD painting full tactical displays. But I'm obligated to help, because that's what I do. I help people. Even when the people are in a universe that isn't mine, fighting a war they can't win, sacrificing everything because extinction is the alternative. Carter extended his hand. Welcome to the war, Iron Man. Try not to do anything else stupid. Tony shook the Spartan's hand, feeling the augmented strength barely restrained. Commander, I literally fell through dimensions because I was testing experimental technology in my workshop without proper safety protocols. Stupid is basically my brand. Then you'll fit right in with Spartans. We specialize in stupid plans that somehow work. Through the viewport, space stretched infinite and cold. Somewhere out there, the autumn was hunting Forerunner mysteries. Somewhere, Covenant fleets prepared for humanity's final extinction. Somewhere, people were dying in a war that had ground on for nearly 3 decades. And somewhere, in a workshop aboard a UNSC frigate, surrounded by engineers who were learning to adapt arc reactor technology to fusion power, Tony Stark was going to build something that mattered. Because that's what heroes did. They built, they adapted, they survived. Even when the universe was wrong, even when the odds were impossible, even when extinction loomed as the only logical outcome, they fought anyway. Friday, start running simulations on improved Mjolnir shield integration and pull up everything we know about Forerunner technology. If Cortana's hunting ancient superweapons, I want to understand what we're dealing with. Already on it, boss. Though I should note that Forerunner technology operates on principles that make Covenant physics look straightforward. Good. I love a challenge. Tony Stark, genius, billionaire, philanthropist, dimensional refugee, and humanity's newest longshot, looked at his reflection in the polished armor. The Mark 50 gleamed with hybrid technology from 3 different civilizations, a testament to adaptation and desperate innovation. Behind him, Reach's coordinates glowed on tactical displays, a dead world, a glassed monument, a price paid in billions of lives for one ship's escape. The cost was impossible. The math was brutal. The war was unwinnable. But humanity kept fighting because the alternative was extinction. And Tony Stark had never been good at accepting alternatives. Let's get to work, he said. We've got a war to survive, and maybe, just maybe, a few long shots to turn into winning plays. The arc reactor in his chest pulsed steady and bright, a star from another universe burning in the darkness of Halo's desperate war. Some lights refused to go out, even in the face of extinction. Word count 1456. Spartans never die. They're just missing in action. More stories await. Claude can make mistakes. Please double-check responses. Sonnet 4.5.